Good morning, this is Dan. Welcome to the Spiritual Underground Podcast. This morning is a rainy Saturday morning here in late February, and we've got a special guest in the studio, author of 12-Step Spiritual Recovery. Christopher Cohn is sitting in with us. We're going to spend some time talking about the book. Just a complete juiced beginning to this story. The book come out, actually I think people were getting it in their hands on Tuesday was the delivery of when people were starting to receive them. So a long journey and a big crescendo happened when the book finally landed in people's hands and on doorsteps, and it was just a really cool day. So we get this podcast underway to get this movement moving forward. I'll read a little bit first. I'll start at the beginning. This is just the beginning of chapter 1. This is not my beautiful house. This is not my beautiful wife. Well, how did I get here? That is lyrics from Once in a Lifetime by the Talking Heads. You sense something is wrong. You felt it for some time now. For several months, maybe even years, you've been able to put it off. Pretend it wasn't there. Maybe you've been telling yourself, just stay busy. Don't look too deeply. Keep moving forward. But then, there it is, back again, demanding your attention and thwarting your every effort at an intentional ignorance. It's that tickling, uneasy feeling that life isn't supposed to be like this. My life is not supposed to be like this. It has been building in you with the frustration of an unreachable itch, and now the truth will no longer be denied. Welcome to the podcast, Christian.
Well, hello, David. Hello, all you kids out in podcast land. Glad to be here this morning. Appreciate it.
Super fun, ain't it?
Yeah, this is juice. Well, and I did want to say right at the upset. Okay, so if you had told me 4 years ago when I first met you that I would be sitting here doing a podcast with my sponsee talking about my book, I have to tell please, anybody listening, recovery is the coolest thing in the world. Genuinely the coolest thing in the world. I personally did a lot of acid back in the day to try and have these kinds of experiences, and you can never, ever, ever, ever predict the juice that's going to come your way if you're in the solution. You're doing this deal that we do. And so like I say, if somebody had told me that this would have been happening, I said, I just met this guy, there's no possible way. And then here we sit. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, well, I can echo the same sentiment. 4 years ago when I first met you, there was a thing in my head that would tell me over and over again as you were like guiding me. You hear that in my story. I won't go into that too deeply, but as we started doing the work, and you started guiding me, and you would tell me certain things that I would hear you, and there was something drawing me to want to believe and to stay on the path. Mm-hmm. But there was still the other voice in the back going, "This is baloney."
Yeah. Can't be true.
Yeah, can't be true. This is
or
way
what's
too much.
What's the hitch, right?
You're right. Yeah.
That's
Where's the catch?
Alcoholics. We're always looking for that other shoe to drop. We can't believe in nothing.
Yeah. And then I started walking down this path, and to be 4 years later
I think you should add this to your miracle list myself on that miracle story that you got there. Well, you're going to have to probably do an entirely another story is what you're going to have to do in a year from now based on what happens with this new movement we're trying to start.
Right, the journey continues.
Yeah.
In that other list, in that other podcast I spoke that you say, add that to the list. It's kind of like our other little thing. You know what that is,
add
don't
to,
you?
Add to.
Add that to the list. And so, this needs to get added to the list.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
Very excited to be here this morning. Can't wait to dig into all this.
So where do you want to start? Want to start talking about what was the catalyst that started this whole thing?
First of all, people need to understand this was not my intention to write this book. I for lack of a better term, without sounding too pompous, had a calling. I was asked to write this book because if you had told me years ago, would you like to write a book about the steps? Would you like to modernize the approach? Would you like to start a new movement for everybody to do the steps? I would have said, you're crazy, can't be done. And certainly not me, right? Certainly not me. I am not capable of such a task. But that's the miracle of having a higher power in your life, because it gives you that strength. It gives you that, it keeps you carrying on when you cannot carry on yourself, right? Doing for me what I cannot do for myself. Right. So, well, all this started, Dan, back in about 1997. I had found myself I'd come back to Louisville, and I actually wanted to come back when I was a kid, you know, just like anybody in a hometown. Couldn't wait to kick the dust off and go to Los Angeles, go to New York, all the places I've tried to find a new home. And, you know, I was drawn back to my home, and I was a little bit lost, I think. I'd been writing, and I worked for a corporation for about 6 years, and not happy in the systems and institutions land, you know, as we call it. And when I came back, I knew I needed a sponsor, and I was a little bit floating in the program. I mean, I had what I call fine and dandy recovery. It's kind of the general brand of recovery you see out there. I go to a meeting every now and then, you know, I help others if I'm called upon, but not really seeking it out myself. And I knew I needed a sponsor, and I started going to this meeting on Thursday nights, and there was this guy there that caught my attention, and he's a little brusque. He has a little bit of a reputation. Some people like him, some people don't. I call him affectionately the Sarge. That's because he was a drill sergeant in the Vietnam War, actually. And I knew I needed a sponsor, and I'll tell you what drew me to him, because a lot of people will say, well, you know, that seems like an odd fit. Why would you pick this guy who's a drill sergeant for the Vietnam War? It's not really... I'm more of a pacifist myself, maybe.
Yeah, right.
And I tell you what I saw. This man, from my memory, went through 3 separate operations for brain surgery on a tumor. And every time he'd come back to the group, he was not in self-pity. He was carrying his head high. The strength I saw in that, and the courage. And I said, how do you go through surgery for brain cancer, right? I think there's probably no 2 scarier words on this planet than brain cancer, in my opinion, right? Yeah. So I saw him walk through that, and I said, teach me how to do that, man, you know, seriously, that was something. And what he did right away is he started feeding me tapes. You know, this is back in the day, kids, when we'd have CDs all just hanging around. These are like cassette tapes, yeah.
Popping in the car stereo.
Or in your Walkman, remember the old Walkman, right? Jam around in that. And I mean, he popped tapes at me every week. We took a big 6-tape step study from one guy, and then a story from another guy, and it was all what I call the spiritual giants of Alcoholics Anonymous. These are people who are our unsung heroes. I know there's a lot of people out there who will take an attitude towards circuit speakers, and I say, you get out there and do that work if you think it's so damn easy to give up your weekends and be away from your kids for the sake of service to help others recover, right? And these people are putting themselves out there. I mean, telling their full story, sharing their experience, strength, and hope. And I started listening. As I'm listening, I'm seeing this deeper level of recovery. I could feel it. These people, you know, you can tell when somebody gets at the podium and it's all ego, and then as soon as they walk away, they drop that facade, and you're like, yeah, I knew it. You were just acting up there is what you were doing. But these people had a peace. They had a strength of character. They had a mission. They had a purpose that was way deeper than I was seeing in the average member in the groups I was going to. And I knew I was missing something. I didn't quite know what it was. I just knew that these guys have something I want, and I want to get some. Luckily, Providence took a hold. I started going to this men's group here in town that has quite a reputation. It's a little bit of a hard-ass group. A lot of testosterone in the room. You definitely want to watch your mouth when you go in there. Otherwise, you'll get picked apart. And there was this guy there, Dr. Burns, one of our gurus here in town. I assume there are gurus in every town and burg in the world of AA, people that we rely on for answers and guidance, and they have experience beyond the average person. And Dr. Burns took an interest in me in a retreat we had gone to for that group one time, and he said, you know, I'm going to take you through the steps. And I don't think he knew or had any idea why, and I didn't either. I just felt like, yeah, well, it's about time. I haven't been through the steps in a while, so let's go through them again. And by the way, that's something you can do, in case anybody out there wasn't taught that way. It's actually meant that you go through the steps several times, because you do accumulate things throughout your life that you need to dump.
But the word continue is used.
Continue, yeah, what a concept, right? Or just settle for, this is good enough. Right?
Yeah, I didn't read that settle for.
Well, that's what we see a lot, unfortunately. So we started working the steps, and there was one speaker in particular, Scott L. from Nashville, who played a huge influence on my growth. And the tapes, all the spiritual giants I was listening to, I used everybody. I mean, I'm a sort of a student of, I like to say I haven't done very many things well in recovery, but one thing I know I get an A+ at is I'm a good student. I will sit there at your feet and I will listen and I will absorb and I'll shut up and I'll take it in and I'll do what you say. And so I started doing that, and a miracle happened. Something happened. Something changed in me. I went to this next level of recovery that I like to call optimum. And I don't think I'm there at like the top, right? I'm still saying there's a lot of room for me to grow and expand, but I was operating on this whole new fourth dimension existence that Bill talks about in the book, right? For those of you who've read the big book, Bill says, you know, the fourth dimension of existence when you do this work. And as a writer, I always had to stop at some of the choices he made, because we know that Bill had a dictionary out when he was writing the book, because he didn't want to repeat himself too much. He wasn't a professional writer. And so if you think about that phrase, okay, he had to, anything that existed within the three-dimensional world wasn't enough to describe how good recovery was at that level. And so he went and said, it's the fourth dimension, right? And we don't see that in rooms. We don't see fourth dimension of recovery. We see a lot of people just sort of settling and hanging in there and being dry, doing just enough, right?
Yeah.
So, and I would go out and speak. At that time, I started getting asked to speak a lot at meetings, and I'd talk about it. I'd say, okay, the only thing I can explain it to you guys is that I feel like I had a Hemi V8 engine inside in my soul, and I was probably operating at about 1.5 cylinders. And then suddenly this next level of recovery just opened up the whole engine. I was like, yeah, let's go. This is like, my whole life changed. My whole life changed. My service work became a passion. We started this group called the Holy Rollers, which was prior to the spiritual underground going on. And we called ourselves the Holy Rollers because we would roll up on a person who was hurting, a person who was dying, and we wouldn't let them leave the parking lot until they were part of our group. Yeah. We wouldn't take no for an answer. We wouldn't get them sober against their will, guys. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But we had an enthusiasm that was infectious, and they wanted to be a part of it. Then I started thinking to myself, you know, if I've had this experience and these other guys have had this experience, I don't feel like it's getting out there, and I don't feel like it's written down anywhere. And I've always had this thought, it's in the book, when I was a kid, why is there not a manual for life to be successful, right? We have the Bible, we have the Quran, we have all these things about telling us to be a good person, don't be a sinner, don't kill each other, right? Like you have to be told not to kill each other, I don't know.
Thou shalt not.
Yeah, exactly. But we don't really have a manual about how to succeed and have the optimum experience of happy, joyous, and free in this life. And you have to think about those words too, and we'll talk about that. You know, those are very specifically chosen words about how we're supposed to feel once we do this work. Happy, joyous, free. Do you see that in their rooms? Look around. That's I just ask people during the middle of the meeting, go ahead, look around. What do you see? Do you see happy, joyous, and free? Because to me, happy, joyous, and free is going to like a playground with a bunch of kids.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
There's your happy, joyous, and free.
Yeah.
It's right in your face.
Yeah. The screaming, the running, the playing.
Yeah. No, none of that programming, which we'll get into later. They're free of all of that. So I said, you know, this should be documented. There should be a way to write this down. And I went to my old spiritual teacher in Minnesota. Her name was Marion Rice. God bless her. She's my greatest teacher I've ever had. About 4'8". Well, I exaggerate. She was probably 5'3" or something. But she had red hair out of a bottle, and she was nutter in a fruitcake, but she was so positive, and she taught me so much about the spiritual laws and spiritual truths and how to use them, most importantly. And I said to her, you know, I really want to write a book with you because everything you've taught me has meant so much to me and the world doesn't know. And she actually took my hand and when we were eating, and she said, you have to write your own book. You have to write your own voice. And I was very hurt by that. I mean, I left and I was like, what the hell? You know, I'm trying to approach you. I'll do all the work. I just want to use the tapes from the classes and stuff, right? And she didn't feel that that was the way it was supposed to be, and God bless her for doing that. Fast forward, I got another spiritual teacher down here, Kathy May Miller. She's what we call an angel whisperer, for stretch your minds a little bit out there. She has an angel guide named Josephine, and she's pretty in tune. If you ever met her, and I need to take you to her sometime, Dan, it'll blow your mind.
I've been threatening that for a long time.
Well, let's make a date, because she's got the goods, and I've been to people who don't. And anyway, I went on a retreat with her, and I was struggling to write this spiritual book on my own, and I was probably about 400 pages in, maybe 500 pages in. I had a pretty good project going for a couple of years there. And I was very restless. It was Sunday. I wasn't getting anything out of the group, and I'm like, I'm just gonna go walk the grounds. I need to get out of here. It was an early spring day. The wind was really blowing up hard, and the trees are going back and forth, and there's a little bit of greenery starting out, and it was warm with the sun, but also cold at the same time, And I was very restless, just like the weather and the wind, and it just occurred to me, it was like, you've got to give up, you've got to stop writing this book. This is not the book you're meant to write. You got to start over. And I was like, you gotta be freaking kidding me. I've been working on this for 2 or 3 years. I've got 400 or 500 pages. You're telling me I gotta throw this away, start over? That's what the voice said, loud and clear. You gotta start over. So immediately I ran to find Kathy May. I ran to her room and talked to her, and I said, what the hell's going on? She says, well, it sounds like that's what you gotta do. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Didn't even give me any sort of cushion or I'm sorry, baby. Just sort of like, that's what you gotta do. So I'm like, you know how we do. And I sat down and started writing this, and this book evolved on me. It took a hold as I was writing it, and I didn't realize I was going to write the steps and how to do them and all that. That was not the goal. The goal was to write my truth and what I've been through in my spiritual growth journey, right? But I didn't know I was going to write so-called, quote-unquote, a modern take on a big book. Yeah, and that's very scary language for me. I'm not trying to insult or, offend anybody out there, but, all I can say is I work in a treatment facility every day, and we're watching these kids die from heroin and everything else there, and so what? They're gonna throw the blue book in and say, read this about this guy from about, 80 years ago and see what you get out of it? Could we do more, as we like to say with a capital M?
Yeah.
So I've been at it for about 5 years, I think is a fair estimate of how long it's taken me to write this book. It's fought me every turn, every lick. You've been with me on that. It's not been easy, not come easy.
No, it hasn't.
At all. And to wrap up, and we'll get into other things, I think my goal in writing the book was I wanted to first document, right, what we talked about, how can people get this next level of juice? For those who don't know what juice is the God stuff, the good stuff. That's the stuff that makes you happy, joyous, and free. And you heard me, you're like, juice, that's good stuff. I love that. That's awesome. It just feeds you. It gives you something, right? And then it started occurring to me, we're writing this book for everybody. This isn't just for alcoholics or addicts to maybe go to that next level of recovery. This is a book that we can now open up the doors possibly to the entire world.
Right.
And share these, for how many years have we sat in the rooms and said, gee, I wish my mom or dad had this program.
Yeah.
I wish my friends had these steps.
Yeah, everybody outside.
Yes.
Yeah, we do get some.
Or the world, we say, what kind of great world would it be if everybody worked the 12 steps?
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Can you imagine that heaven on earth we would have if everybody worked the principles in the 12 steps? Seriously.
Yeah.
No war, no famine, no hating on your brother, no prejudice.
Yeah. So wishing, when people were talking about their spouses and, the parents and the boss and always pointing to somebody else saying that wish they would work this program too.
Well, it's kind of a funny experience. The book's only been out 5 days maybe. And I run into several people who are like, oh, it'd be so great if my sister read this, or let me get one for my brother. And I keep trying to tell them, no, this is actually for you too. You might want to peek your nose in there and get something.
Yeah, that is funny. I need one of those for my buddy, not for me.
And automatically they associate somebody who's addicted.
Yeah,
my son's addicted, so he needs to read this. And saying, well, you're probably pretty sick with his addiction too, from codependency and things. You might get something out of this as well.
Yep.
So that's about the origins of it, and I can't believe it's out. We went through the whole process of getting it listed on Amazon, which if anybody's done that out there, my hat's off to you. It's a nightmare. I don't know why it's got to be so complicated, but it was, as you were with me the whole way.
Yeah,
and then this guy calls me on like Sunday morning, hey, it's out. And I'm like, what? I'm half asleep. What's going on? What? It's out.
Yeah, the proof copy and all that, would you hit the submit button on Friday? Was the day that you hit the final?
I think so, yeah. And then they sent me an email on Saturday saying I needed to fix this one little thing.
Yeah, so it was just the day before.
Yeah, and I didn't expect, over the weekend, who expects them to be working on a Sunday?
Yeah, I expected it to be a Monday thing, but I kept on looking. And Tyler woke up Sunday morning, gave it a look, went to yoga, did a yoga class, walked outside, sat in the car, pulled up my phone, gave it a look, and pow, there it was. And that was, and I was like looking around to see if anybody else, like the world was supposed to know, hey, look. But it Yeah, a really fun day. It's been a fun bunch of days.
It really
going into
has
it,
a
and,
real
you know, the
flurry of
whole-
activity, texts and emails and calls and people excited and yeah, life happening right now.
Yeah, and the whole journey alongside of you with it, you know, the honor that I feel to have been along with you, you know, and you talked about it a little bit when we first started getting together and working together, you know, but I really obviously, like at that point in time, my eyes were fairly closed, and I was only concerned with surviving the next couple of days and not going to prison and things like that.
Which is pretty important.
Yeah, it was really important to me. It really, really was. And
You had your goals straight at the
yeah,
time.
yeah.
You just really wanted to stay out of prison.
So I could hear that, and it was more like, yeah, you know, what do I need to do next? I got this thing going on. So then when, you know, some time went by and you would tell me about it, you know, and share the day-to-day things on writing, and it started like, I remember it started like seeping in where, you know, there was some, frankly, in the beginning, I wasn't that interested, right? Yeah, like you said, I had bigger things going on. But as time went by and I started getting healthier and I started to hear, and I also finally started, I guess at some level my heart started opening, right?
Mhm.
So and then I was able to actually hear your passion about it, where that was blocked from me before,
Mhm.
you know, and I could start feeling that, the passion you had for the writing, and I could hear the frustration, and I could hear
You
that.
did your own steps too, and I think being awakened from the process of doing your steps.
Yeah,
where
right.
you're able to see things you just
Yeah,
couldn't see
yeah,
before.
yeah,
It's like
I was
I'm trying to
getting well.
throw this book at people who have no reference point at what the steps are. They just go, oh yeah, whatever. They just don't understand. You just could change everything in your daggone life.
Yeah.
You know.
And so yeah, it was because of doing the steps that my heart was opening and my mind was opening and different things. So I was coming alive, I could say, you know, and I remember the day that you were talking. You said, "Hey, I would like to give you this one chapter and have you read it and see what you think," you know, or something of that nature, you know. And man, I mean, if I could have come like dove through the telephone and went through the wire, I'd have landed in your lap with my hands out. But I think if I remember right, I probably played it cool and said, "Yeah, man, I guess I'll do that. That'd be okay, I suppose." But
Well,
when
that's
I first
kinda
got it in my hand and first started reading it, you know, I could see it, you know, it was the introduction of the book, and I have it right here in front of me, of knowing that the process you had just taken me through, which completely, like when the other book says, revolutionized my entire way of thinking,
Yeah.
was starting to appear in words in my
Which
head.
is what Carl Jung said we need, a complete rearrangement.
Yeah.
A dramatic.
Yeah, deep and effectual.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, we started doing that little deal where, you know, you'd give me a manila folder full of papers. I don't even think you gave it to me. I think you handed me the papers in the first, and I started putting them in manila folders to give it back to you, because I needed some way like to keep it captured. And so then I remember, like, it was almost like a dope deal out in the parking lot at the end of Tuesday night. You know, I'd give you my package and you'd give me yours, and we'd swap, and I'd give it back. And I remember, you know, you were asking me for feedback, and that was really hard to give you feedback. You know, I was shy on that, but you know, we started that little process of being able to actually put some marks in it.
Yeah, and for people who don't understand, when you're on the path, and I don't mean this to sound, like I said, pompous or egotistical, but when you're hooked in with higher power and you're doing everything you're supposed to do, there's an energy that happens where everything just starts opening up and things happen for a reason, and it's all meant to help you along the way. And you coming into my path exactly at that time, I mean, I'll go on record to the day I die that without your support, I may have finished this, but I would have been like ready for the nut house, because you're an angel that came into my life at just the right time. There's no doubt about that.
Oh, that touches me deeply, man. Eyes are fogging up with those words. And it's an honor to have walked along, you know, and that whole process of watching it go from those manila folders to a second reading and another draft, you know, and you're thinking it's gonna be ready, but you just weren't happy with it yet, you know, and you knew there was something still missing, and so you swept through it
Well,
again.
and we can talk about that a little bit if you want. That was the tricky part of this whole project. Okay, so it's really a book in two parts. The second part of the book is obviously the entire 12-step process, and wanted to, for as hard a goals maybe this is to achieve, as best as possible to replicate the process. what it's like to have a seasoned sponsor in the program take you personally through and say, hey, this is what you need to watch out for because this can really burn you, and you need to do it this way because it works out better this way, and follow directions here closely, newcomer, because you're going to miss this point.
Watch for this pitfall.
Yeah, exactly.
And the other side of it is to encourage and continue to raise them
totally,
up.
totally. Cheerlead them on and say, hey man, you're doing great, keep going on. I know you want to quit, you're almost done with your 4-step, keep going, you know. And because that, you just can't get that out there. I mean, you'd have to go to a lot of means and search out and find just the right person who might be qualified to be able to do that. And then it'd have to be the right fit. And then you stick with them. And like you said in your podcast with Nick, I was listening to this week, it's all tribal knowledge, right?
Yep.
There's not any place where you could reference on page 36, okay, this is what tells you exactly the 9th step, what to watch out for, this kind of stuff. And as tribal knowledge, I was thinking about that after I listened to the podcast, we could lose it. Civilizations have come and gone, wisdom has come and gone, art has come and gone, knowledge has come and gone, but there's something about the written word that I think helps to assure that it can be around for next generations, you know, maybe not permanently, that too can be destroyed, but it certainly helps. And so as I was saying, it was a 2-part deal. Okay, so we got the second part of the book, which is the whole step process, and I knew these people who didn't have any experience with the steps wouldn't have any meetings to go to. They wouldn't have any sponsors. So I was going to have to take on that role and make sure that they're safe. Because the worst thing you want to do is cut somebody loose in the 12 steps and say, hey, you do your 4-step by yourself, good luck.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And then they end up blowing their brains out. Because it's dangerous stuff if it's done haphazardly, all by yourself.
Yeah, you open those wounds.
Yeah. And then the first part of the book was trying to put those puzzle pieces together. Okay, so why does the average person need to do the 12 steps? And it's so funny in our present world, there isn't a person you can encounter, I don't care who you walk up to on the street corner, Joe Blow, ask them what they think about what's going on in the world today. And they'll say, there's some sick ass shit going on out there, no doubt about it. And they can't see it in themselves, right? Somehow I'm separate from it. You know, I live in the fishbowl. I drink the same water. I eat the same food. I hear the same words. And I watch the same TV shows, right? But somehow I'm separated from this process. I'm not affected by it because that's what the ego does. And so I knew I was going to have to find that hit of, okay, so they're not suffering from alcoholism. They're not suffering from addiction or codependency. So what is this person? What's the ism that these people are suffering from? And it was like, I can't believe. I don't even remember the day when it dawned on me, just thinking about Bill, and what an amazing genius. And we would not be here without him, period, in the story, and Dr. Bob as well. But Bill putting those pieces together that, you know, underneath our exterior symptoms, there's a much deeper malady going on, and that much deeper malady is spiritual in nature. Right? It's not a physical disease. We do suffer from a physical illness. We have genes that make us sick. We are different than other people who do not understand about alcoholism. I'm a licensed clinical alcohol and drug counselor, and I can tell you it is a confirmed illness. These people are different in their brain, okay? Just like any other mental illness, they have deficiencies, okay? We don't look at a schizophrenic and say, oh, just get over it, right? But we do with alcoholics and addicts still to this day in 2019. Because all that moral shit that's left over from history, right? You're a bad dog, you're a harlot, you shouldn't be doing what you're doing, right? Having too much fun, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like willpower.
Yeah, well, it's the exact opposite.
Yeah,
for those of
that's
us,
what we blame, you know, that'll be said. Why
but
don't
for
you
the,
have the willpower
but for the
to
listener
stop?
who might not understand what I'm saying is that the problem with addicts and alcoholics is that they have too much willpower. I mean, have you been able to stop them from drinking so far?
Yeah.
So who's winning that battle of willpower right there?
Yeah, that will is mighty strong to get to
That ego, that's what we gotta be broke of, right? So coming up with, Bill said, okay, so we got this much deeper malady, it's spiritual in nature, it's not physical, it's not really mental, but there's something wrong with my soul. Now, we immediately think when we hear spiritual sickness because of our training, our conditioning, our programming, as I call it, we think religion, right?
Religion, right.
Church, that's all, well, we all had that as kids, right? Unless you
Spirit
grew up in a
equals
different
religion.
country. And then you had your own particular brand in that country. And we start thinking about morals, and I need to be a better person, I need to be a Samaritan who goes out and helps others, whatever. No, but what we're talking about is that this world we've created for ourselves as human beings, our structures, our systems and institutions, it works to an extent, right? Okay, we all basically kind of get along, we kind of try to separate, or how do I say this? For whatever for good or bad, it works as it is, but it may not be optimum. And what happens with people is, as you're going through this world with the systems we have, you get experiences that are negative, you get experiences that are pressure, bad, affect you and change you. And that's when that concept came to me about the photograph, finding your picture of yourself when you're in a family album back then. Everybody out there listening, you have a photograph somewhere in one of your family albums of a time when you were completely happy, joyous, and free, and you were completely untouched by everything this world has done to you since then. And if you don't know where to look for it in the eyes.
Right.
It's not the gesture, it's not the costume you got on, it's not whatever you're doing in the picture, it's in the eyes. You can see that there's a soul inside there, there's a spirit, there's an energy. That's where you were. That's what I call the original self, the original soul, right?
Yep.
And after that, everything was added on. We started getting indoctrinated. We started getting taught. We started having to go to school. We had to go to church. We were in certain families. We had traditions. We do it this way, not that way, right? You're a Republican. You're a Democrat. We start getting labels. We start separating. We learn about prejudice. You're black. You're white. All that other crap that a kid doesn't have, particularly around the religious stuff, right? I say to my patients, man, go up to a kid who's 4 or 5 years old on the playground and ask them what they think about God. You're going to hear nothing but positive stuff. You're not going to hear about sin, you're not going to hear about hell, you're not going to, unless they've been damaged already, and God forbid at that young age, right?
Yeah, right.
You're going to hear nothing but good stuff about a higher power, which is how we all feel. And which cracks me up about so many of our members today who say they can't come into the program because of the God stuff, right?
Right. Yeah. Typical thing.
Because they've been damaged, they've been hurt by other human beings. And that always astounds me too, that alcoholics who are so independent would allow themselves to be controlled by their enemies like that. These are people we didn't like, people we didn't appreciate what they shared or did to us. And today we're still allowing them to stop me from finding a spirituality that could work for me. So anyway, your soul becomes sick. That's the bottom line on spiritual sickness. Your original self has been so fed up with all this programming.
Faulty programming.
Yeah, and how we're supposed to be as human beings, that it's had enough. And I think that's what we're seeing in our world today, is people who've had enough. Everybody's angry, everybody's frustrated. If you go to the mall and watch people, they all have frowns on their face, you know. People in traffic are just cutting each other off and don't give a damn, and everybody's self-centered and, you know, and very cynical about the future.
Guarded.
Yeah.
Everybody's got a wall up, you know, that don't get too close to me, don't look at me, don't smile at me.
Well, they expect a fist.
Yeah.
You know, I could always see that look in people's eyes when there's a little mistake made. Somebody bumps into somebody else in the airport, or somebody cuts somebody off in their car, and then there's this moment where you could tell the person's expecting a fight first.
Yeah, right.
A curse word, right?
Yeah.
that's gonna be the first thing they're expecting, then they're gonna jump right in too.
Yeah, the defenses just fly right up.
Yeah, and so guys out there listening, that means that's your sickness. That's the stuff inside of you that's built up to the point that you're so filled up. Your trash can, as we talk about, is so filled up that you can't take it anymore. One more piece sends you over the edge.
Yep.
And I have that theory about mass shooters too. I know I'm on tricky ground here, but I'll go there. I believe with all my heart that if they had just done the 4th and 5th step, those people would still be alive. Because what happens after the fact? We always find out there's some sort of list they made out of all their beefs.
Yeah,
some
right.
manifesto
Yeah, they
they've
call
left
them one.
behind that, oh, this is how the world has harmed me. And well, dude, that's a 4th step
Yeah,
right
1
there.
and 2.
If you had just done your columns and talked to your sponsor, maybe you wouldn't have picked up a gun.
Yeah.
So it's a long-winded way of saying, to keep it simple, is that whoever you were at birth has been changed. And there is a way with this program to clear away that wreckage, to clear away that damage. Taking out the trash, as we call it, right? And when you do, that's when people end up happy, joyous, and free. They're not carrying that stuff, that energy, that what was done to me when I was 11, what was done to me when I was 6, what that one guy said in church one time, what my parents tried to teach me, and we're still carrying all that stuff.
Some peer, some older peer, you know, tons of just different directions where you get this programming in you that sticks. You know, you carry it. I can think of things. You know, I'm sitting in the same neighborhood I grew up in.
Yeah.
And when you're saying that kind of stuff,
I was worried about that when I drove down the street. I was like, geez, you know, Dan's living here his whole life.
Yeah, since I was 3 years old. You know, yeah, so it's you know, obviously I moved away for a little while. I'm in the middle of my adulthood, but I was here. But what I was saying is my mind flashed back to like the basketball court down the street, and having friends. When my dad would whistle for me to come home, and having my friends talk me into staying and playing longer when I knew I was going to get in trouble, but I couldn't you know, I couldn't speak my truth even at that point and say, no, guys, I have to go home. And, you know, so then you end up, I just get flash into that programming and the different things that hit me growing up that, you know, and that in itself is not a big deal, right? But it's just one more thing in the trash can that started, you know, getting in there.
It all adds up.
It all adds
It
up.
all adds up. And you said a very interesting word there, my truth. What the hell is my truth anymore?
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm a Calvin Klein wearing, Coca-Cola drinking, McDonald's eating, Ford driving, Republican voting, I mean, all these labels, who am I?
Yeah.
What is my real truth underneath all this garbage? That doesn't even exist. If you go to halfway around the world, none of the garbage we're accepting as absolute stone truth here in America even exists in their culture, right?
Right. Yeah.
I always say that to my patients, you know, have you ever considered if you were born on a tropical island in some sort of tribe and all you did all day was kick a soccer ball on the beach and surf and catch fish and be with your family and never knew alcohol or drugs? Your entire life would be completely different.
Yeah.
And we don't have any choice over that. We don't have the choice of what family we're born into, what city we're born into, what country we're born into, and so we're sort of just thrust out there and say, here you go, and you better learn the way we do it. If you're gonna fit in, you better learn the way we do it here in Indiana or Kentucky or wherever the hell you might be.
It's kind of like being down, you know, and there you land, and now where do I go from here?
Fit in or be outcast. And as a kid, obviously, we're all, I mean, that's a plague among our kids nowadays with the social media and how they have to take 200 pictures of themselves and Photoshop it to death to make sure they're presenting this perfect image of themselves out there. Speaking of which, I have this theory that if we don't get busy with this crap, I think we're going to lose what it means to be a human being. I think we're going to lose our soul if we don't change big time. You know, how do I want to say this? The technological revolution has been happening a while now, but now it's taking on proportions. Cameras everywhere, right? They're going to watch your every flipping move. So if God forbid if you make a mistake or fart or doing things like a human being normally does, it's going to be all over the news because the congressman's not supposed to be that way.
Surveillance is everywhere. I mean, it's even you go to somebody's house and you don't know that you're being taped. You know, they've got cameras in their house.
Everywhere.
They're saying, you know, you go up and ring somebody's doorbell. You go anywhere, you're potential of being caught on tape.
Well, they have these new satellites now that they're launching like at a crazy pace that can pinpoint down to the size of an ant. And there's so many of them now because they're cheaper, right? I saw a story about that the other day. But my biggest concern is that the technology is starting to incorporate into who we are. People that are going to incorporate technology into their body. The first time Apple comes out with an app that says, oh, you can put your iPhone into your hand, or a little speaker phone camera into your shoulder, and suddenly, what are we going to turn into cyborg Terminator creatures? And what does that mean for our humanness? Because, you know, I think public spaces are the best place to see the quality of human nature today compared to like the 40s. All right, so if you go to the airport in the 1940s, you know, people are kind of dressed decent, you know, because they care about, you know, at least, you know, try to take care of themselves and stuff and look good. And they are polite, you know, please, thank you, excuse me, things like that. And go to the airport today and just sit there and watch people go from terminal to terminal, and they're dead. It's like watching an episode of The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Nobody's in the eyes, they're completely emotionally unavailable. Just a little robot, get in your seat, CA, and, you know, close your window and get your seat back up and get your seatbelt on. And it's, what are we doing to ourselves? What are we doing to ourselves as creatures, as animals, which is what we are, we're animals, right? Our ego wants to separate us and say, oh, well, somehow I'm different than my dog or my cat. No, you're not. We are conditioned animals. If it feels good, we do it. If it feels really good, we do it a lot. And then we develop a habit, which is hard to break. And it's all about reward. It's all about, that's what this book is about. This book is about, can we change? Can we, our only solution is going to come from the spiritual realm now. And unfortunately, everybody's thinking church when I say that.
Right.
And we've got to stop pointing the finger at other people and saying that it's their fault. We have to start pointing the finger at ourselves and looking in the mirror. I'm as sick as anybody else. I don't even know how sick I am until I do my step work, right?
Right.
How many guys do we have during their fifth step that all of a sudden they have that moment,
Bing.
right? Where they realize, oh my God, I've been asleep at the wheel of my life for all these decades.
Yeah.
What have I done? How could I possibly have not seen this? And when you clear away that wreckage, you get to a place where you can start over. And I don't even know of any other programming or methodology or techniques or anything that's out there. I mean, you know, there's disciplines, right? Like you do yoga and
Sure,
things like
yeah.
that. There's faith followings you can do. But something that completely transforms and revolutionizes you from the inside out, so that you come out completely different on the other end, or what I like to say, your true self, getting back to that truth word.
And the mechanics of the tools, the solid concrete methods to do it, rather than, you know, just like, and some stuff is just wishing it away.
Mhm.
You know, just wishing these things away. We actually have a way, you know, these tools give you a way to compartmentalize and put these things in their individual places to see, and like a mean dog, I get to like pet them down and say okay, and train them into being not, you know, now they're okay.
Yeah, right.
And put them all in a
Versus, I'm working with a sponsee right now who's got some parents who are in their 70s, and he's so frustrated that they've not changed at all their entire life.
Yeah.
They're still repeating the same patterns they were repeating when he was being raised by them, right?
Yeah.
And I said, you know, well, what can you expect? I mean, they're an older generation. They're probably never going to do this spiritual work to seek out another path. And that was one of my motivations when I got sober. I was after 2 treatment centers and a halfway house, and I decided to try it one more time, and that was when I finally started to do it for myself. I remember having this thought of I'm not going to go down like the rest of them. You know, I'm going to separate myself from this pack of sickness that has been in my family lineage since who knows how long. I've not done my ancestry to see how many alcoholics, but I know one of my sponsors has. He's a very wealthy man, and he did his ancestry, and he found that 65% of his family died from this disease. And of course, nobody talked about it while I was growing up, right?
Right.
Kind of important information. If your family had cancer, they'd be
Right,
talking
yeah,
about
you
it.
check that box at the doctor's office when you go for the new paperwork and stuff. And actually, I think it actually beginning to start being a box that you check now, but it hasn't been long that they start asking you about chemical dependency histories in your family.
But can I break free from that, or am I cursed by the teachings and programming that they had? And in my book, I talk a lot about the empathy I have for my parents, and then for my grandparents, and then for my great-grandparents, because you have to think about the timing, man. Even Bill Wilson writing the big book in the 30s, it was a completely backwards time. There's no internet, right? There's no television shows talking about self-help stuff. There's no books on it. There's no Oprah. Hello, there's no Oprah, you know? There's nothing for them, right? And you go back to your great-grandparents, it was all about just staying alive. We didn't have time for self-awareness. We didn't have time for spiritual development. Well, you got to go out and dig the freaking trenches and plant the potatoes and get ready to feed yourself, because you're going to die if you don't.
There's no Kroger's and there's no, you know.
You have to go out and hunt, get your food, and keep the land going, whatever you're doing. Survival, right? But that's what I'm saying. I think we're squandering this time. We're in the year 2019. We have the internet at our, think about that tool, right? At my fingertips, in my house, in my pajamas, I can go anywhere in the world and learn anything.
Yep.
And what do? We look up YouTube videos on cats, and as I like to say, people kicking each other in the nuts and things like that, just goofy stuff, which is fine. That's part of the human element too, is to let that side of yourself out.
Yeah.
But how about a video on meditation, or how about a video on personal development? I'll tell you an interesting story. It's a story that happened yesterday. My boss lives in the East End of Louisville, and it's very she, and there's these neighbors down the street, and every time he goes past there, they have a different supercar. And I'm talking like super car in their driveway. Yesterday, it was I didn't even know there was such a thing. It was like a Rolls Royce SUV. I was like, what the hell is that? Why? Why is that even a thing? And Lamborghinis, Ferraris, and then they have their decals on the side for their company, right? And it's this keto thing, right? Yeah, okay, so I get it. They're making a lot of money, they're promoting their business. Nothing wrong with that. I'm not trying to judge on that. But it occurred to me, okay, they're making all that money because it's all about the exterior, right? Everybody's gonna get in shape and look good, so I'm sexy and I get laid, and you know, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
Why aren't we spending money on interior development? Why don't we spend resources on improving my soul, which is all you get to take from this planet, by the way? That little corpse you're gonna leave behind that's in perfect shape, ain't gonna matter. It really not gonna matter.
Right.
I mean, health is important, right?
Sure, sure.
Being in great health is very important, right? But as far as being like perfect looking, like some sort of model on an ad.
There's been those three sides we've talked about for a long time. That mind,
Yeah.
body, spirit stuff is
Yeah.
old language, old concepts, and you're right. We spend a lot of money on the body, but we would say we can't afford to. Some people would say they can't afford the time to do the other.
Hell, some people are
kind
gonna
of
say they
things.
can't afford this book, right?
Right, yeah, they are.
$39.95. And I always say to my dope friends, how much you spent on dope last night or the night before?
Yeah, I mean, that's not.
Way
that's-
beyond that.
Yeah, right, yeah, that's an hour worth.
Mhm. Or an alcohol.
Yeah, yeah.
So, the goal ultimately, and I know you've probably been talking about this, is this thing TSSR, 12-Step Spiritual Recovery. We're gonna start meetings, and it's gonna be a total grassroots movement. The idea is to replicate the AA experience. I mean, if these guys could do it back in the 30s, I absolutely believe that with cell phones and technology and internet, we can absolutely do it today.
Yeah.
And the idea being that anybody and everybody can come to these meetings to learn what the hell we're talking about, in case most of what we're saying is like, I don't know what that guy's talking about, which I've had people say after when I'm speaking at meetings, I don't know what the hell that guy's talking about. If you're hungry, if you're hurting, if you're tired of this sick ass world, if you're tired of watching your television set and throwing things at it and saying, I can't believe what's going wrong, why? Come in here, we can help you. You can free yourself. You don't have to go down with the ship. And that's what you have to do. You've got to look at you, clean yourself out first, and only when you become well can you then go about healing others in the world and healing the world.
Yeah, a lot of things in the book, and there's a lot in it. One of the things says to some effect of, I can change me. That's where I can do.
That's all I
I
can
look
do
at
right
all
now.
this stuff out there, and there's really nothing I can do about this. I'm not going to change what's going on
Which
in
is
the
funny,
White
because
House.
right,
I'm not
let
going
me
to
just
know
say,
what's.
Dan, we get so caught up with our energies all day long about Washington and what they're doing.
What's going
and
on
our
everywhere
energies.
else.
Well, what can you do about it? What are you going to do about today?
Yeah, yeah. So I look
But
at
I
all
can't
that.
go to my meeting and work on my 4-step and put that guy on my 4-step, right?
Yeah. We just sit and watch that box on the wall, get all wound up about what's going on all over the entire world, or looking in your computer, or that other book says Deliberate Manufacture of Misery, where I'm actually, I'm on the hunt for the crappy stuff that's going on in the world.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
feeding myself
Looking for
that.
it.
I'm out
Looking
hunting
for
it,
it.
mining it,
And all those-
then once I find it,
Mhm.
then I must share it with you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you,
Then it's viral.
then I'm on Facebook. I will share this article because the world needs to know about this.
I love the link headlines. I always step back and I look at what are they using in that headline to try and get me to press that button.
Yeah.
And it's fear, right?
Right.
It's prejudice, it's anger, it's outrage. Oh, especially outrage. Like, I can't believe somebody did that. Click, I want to read what they did.
Yeah, Joe Rogan talks about the outrage culture going on, that it's like a
Interesting.
recreation.
I love that.
It's a recreation
I love
now,
that.
is the outrage culture. And be just like, well, look at this, and then share it and try to get everybody fever pitched in with you, the internet mob mentality.
So our approach at TSSR is, I'm sick. And I'm tired of being sick. I'm tired of being part of the problem. I want to be part of the solution. I want out. I want an exit door out of this madness. Right? And we who are in this program of 12 steps have found a way to live within this sort of fourth dimension of existence where for most days, we have human experiences. We have good days, bad days, but we're pretty much untouched by the crap of this world. Would you agree with that?
I agree, yeah.
And people will look at us and say, what are you so damn happy about?
Yeah, I get it all the time. What are
All
you
the
smiling
time.
about?
Mhm.
Especially at work.
Yeah, at work is the
I'm
most
working,
place
I got a
to get it.
smile on my face, and people go, what are you smiling about? Well, I hardly know that I am really, I don't really know. I'm happy.
Well, how about
The
this?
bigger question is, why are you not smiling?
Yeah, exactly. How about this? My heart's beating.
Yeah, lots of things. to
You know what?
smile
I could
about.
take a clean breath today. Quit smoking. Hey, I have food to eat at home. I had a place to lay my head last night on a pillow where I was warm and protected. Not everybody has that, right?
Not
Why
to
aren't
mention-
you happy?
Not to mention my
I was
consciousness
amazing.
clean,
Like,
I'm
I'll be in
sitting-
traffic. I like to watch people go by. When I'm at a stoplight, I'll watch the drivers go by. And every single one has a scowl on their face. And some of them are driving some nice rides, right? And I'm like, man, if you're driving that nice a ride, why are you frowning?
Yeah, if he was.
Well, probably because they're in
if it was
debt,
sputtering-
right? Because they bought it and they can't afford it.
You can understand if it's sputtering and spurting and smoke was coming out the back. You can see understand the look on the face. So then I'm in a brand new SUV, and You can physically see the tightness in the fists on the steering wheels and like the tension in the faces and the jaws of folks as they just move
All right,
around.
so that's another example I use in the book, and then I try to use examples that people can, picture it and get it. We would never, if you ever saw a junkyard dog and you went to pet it and then tried to bite your arm off, and you knew that pet had been abused its entire life, right?
Right.
Nobody would sit around and say, "Oh, I can't believe that.
Yeah.
Why is that dog acting that way? That is just unacceptable." No, we'd say, "Poor little puppy, I totally understand. You've been hurt, right?
Yeah.
You've been hurt. You've been abused. You deserve better." Why don't we feel that way about ourselves?
And each other.
What we put ourselves through on this planet, I just marvel every day just trying to get by myself as a human being on this damn planet. Paying taxes, taking care of my health, having to brush your teeth, change the oil in your car. There's a great title of a book that I've always loved. It says, "After the ecstasy, the laundry." I gotta just get by and do my shit, and then I gotta deal with the systems and institutions that are trying to program me and get me every turn and say, "Believe this, think this, do it this way it's correct, do it wrong." Why wouldn't you drink?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you just blow your mind out with chemicals every damn night
Just
just
get home
to
and sit on
survive
the
all
couch,
that?
man. I need some relief.
Yeah. And there's another way. That's the thing. It's a better way. And that's the other thing I like to tell my patients. You gotta understand, listeners, I'm in a war zone every day of people who are very sick with this illness, and they do not want to hear what I've got to say. I always laugh when, before I even open my mouth, as soon as I walk in the room, well, actually, before I even come in the room, they hate me. Right? So they got this preconceived, who's this guy? Man, I hate this guy. He's authority. He's a counselor. I hate him. And so that's a hard crowd to play to. I will tell you that straight up. And I try to tell them that, I totally lost my thought. It'll come back to me.
Well,
Hang in there. It was really good, guys. I promise it'll come back later.
The one thing I've said from the beginning of getting behind these microphones, though, is that this is real.
Yeah.
This is not stage stuff. This is not produced.
I think, was that on
This is
Nick's
not-
podcast that I heard the dog barking in the
Yeah,
background?
my neighbor's got the coon dogs over here.
I heard
and I believe the siren, anytime any of that happens, it happened a little while ago, they were going nuts just a little bit ago, and I don't think about that, but that's real, we're just regular folks here, not superstar paid employees or pushing some kind of product.
All right, thank you. You helped me remember. By the way, that's a tool, guys. If you can't remember what you were saying, change the topic. And the minute you change the topic, your brain will reset on what you wanted to say.
I'm really good at changing the topic.
So I try to tell them, okay, so when you go to a meeting tonight, because you have to go to these meetings as part of the required program, look around the room and listen. These are guys who are going to tell stories that are either equal to yours or way worse of how bad they were addicted and the things they did. And then you're going to look at them and you're going to see a picture that doesn't correlate with that, right? They're going to be sort of dressed nicer and they look happier and they have kind of peaceful, and you're like, well, I don't quite figure that out. Think about it. If they were like you, they're a fellow addict, they had to have something at the end of the day to deal with this damn world and the systems, institutions, and all the programming that's killing me. They had to have something in them at the end of the day, and they don't now. But they say they found something better with a capital B.
Yeah.
Better. What is that? I mean, I know when I was using dope, I was always looking for the best.
Yep.
If somebody told me to cross town they had something that was like, oh, this is like really the good stuff,
Stay
I'd be
somewhere.
over there in a heartbeat, right?
Yeah.
And yet these people go to me and they see these people who have found something way better than, and I'll even say to my heroin addicts, it's better than heroin. And of course they go, oh, no way, nothing's better than heroin, right? Yeah, no, there's no way these people would be sober. There's no way they would not be pounding a needle into their arm today if they hadn't found something better with a capital B, 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 exclamation point. Think about that. And that's this. 12 steps, man. For the people who have done it, not just going to meetings.
Actually apply the principles.
Well, here's the deal, man. If you have cancer, and I just go down to James Graham Brown Cancer Center here downtown Louisville, and I just watch everybody else take the
Sit in the
chemotherapy.
lobby.
Yeah. And then I go back to my doctor and I say, I can't believe that I relapsed. Can you believe that? I have no idea why I relapsed. I get patients in my group every day like that. I said, motherfucker. Did you do the treatment? Did you do what your doctor told you to do? Oh, you're still sick? Duh. Now, where my hospital is, we're in the middle of a whole conglomeration of hospitals within that square mile, right? That's like Hospital Central in Louisville, Kentucky. And I said, this is the only room within a mile where this conversation is taking place, where a guy's going back to his doctor and saying, I did not do what you told me to do, and I can't believe I'm still sick.
Yeah.
the hell? Which is when I remind them that's why we're in a mental hospital, that you don't understand such things.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just gonna go talk to the other patients, and I will get better, just from hanging around them.
I'll just
They're
go and
taking
get my
the treatment.
paper signed. Isn't that what I'm supposed to do? Get my paper signed. That's what I'm supposed to do.
Get them. There's that.
So this whole thing, you know, we'll see how it goes here, and it's all up to God. But we're going to start this first meeting coming up in a couple of weeks in Louisville, TSSR, 12-Step Spiritual Recovery. Anybody can come. You don't have, you know, somebody asked me yesterday, well, are y'all going to work the steps together? No, that's a step study group. We're just going to have a group where people come ask questions. They're reading the book. They want to know what this means. They don't know how to do things. They can get a sponsor, right? They might ask around the room. There might be somebody who's already in recovery who can guide them. And that's really the call. I want to make sure that we put this out there today. If there's anybody who's listening to this who wants to get in on the ground floor and do some great service work, you are of value. You have this solution already in your life. Why are we not doing more to take it to the rest of the world and save our world? Instead of sitting around going, well, that's just the way it is. I got mine, and they have to figure it out on their own. I don't think that's the way it's supposed to be. I mean, Alcoholics Anonymous has had a long history of sharing the program with everybody else. They're the ones that started Narcotics Anonymous. They do not charge for the 12 steps. They do not copyright the 12 steps. Nobody owns the 12 steps. Bill Wilson thought it was from God. He just said, we don't own the 12 steps. Everybody deserves it. And as I say in the book, and I'm sure it's more, there's 54 different fellowships across this world that use this methodology. From anything you can imagine, they all usually get the same results. They get happy, joyous, and free, right? So why aren't we doing this for the rest of the world? Why are we letting our world go down? Why are we letting them suffer? So when I talk about how we're on the cusp of this time where we need to look at really serious change, you're better at this than I am. You don't watch TV, you try to stay out of touch with all that, but here's where I fall on that. I think it's necessary that I personally, in my program, keep myself abreast of what's happening in the world and really pay attention to the signs. I think it makes me more effective at what I do.
I understand that.
And so, like I read this story the other day on the news feed that said that the UN has now said that because of biodiversity being so damaged, because of climate change, which doesn't exist, ha ha ha, that the food supply may be in serious threatened within the next 10 to 20 years. Food supply, folks. And I know we hear these stories and everybody goes, oh, okay, well, what's on TV? Or, okay, what's in the refrigerator? I'll get another beer. How sick are we that we're gonna just sit here and hear things like this? We might have catastrophic climate change where we're not able to grow crops and there's gonna be droughts. And our kids, well, screw them. You know, I'm a Christian, I don't care about my grandkids. Does that make any sense? That's insane. Step 2, restore me to sanity. How the hell did we get to this place where that kind of shit doesn't get our attention?
Yeah.
So when I say we had better start doing some freaking work, folks, I'm like trying to say this is real. This isn't something you can put off and say, oh, well, I'll worry about that 20 years from now. Okay, you go to the grocery store, there's no food. The honeybees are gone. There's no freaking fruit. We die.
Yeah.
No honeybees, we die. And we just accept these stories and go, oh, well, I'll just bury my head in the sand and just do what I'm going to do today and get my new iPhone, man. You know, I got my new iPhone. I got my Facebook page. I'm doing good. What are you doing with this technology? This technology could be used to help us spread the word. So save yourself, guys. That's basically the main message. When you leave this planet, and I have talked with several workers who work for hospice. That's part of my social work background. And I'm always amazed at what the human animal goes through towards the end of their life. There's this obvious life review they do. You know, what did I do with my time here? How much of that time did I waste? And certainly as alcoholics and addicts, we know that one, how much time I wasted, right? Sitting around the couch, drinking, drugging. And then there's the regrets for what I didn't accomplish, but a lot of it's the regrets of leaving behind a lot of bad energy, the things I didn't clean up. Things I knew I should have said something. I'm running into people who's like, they haven't talked to their kids in like 30 years.
Right. Yeah.
Your kids. You haven't talked to your kids in 30 years? Why don't you clean that up before you die? And of course, when they reach their deathbed, it's too late. You're laying there with that agony for however long you're going to go through that process of dying. I don't know, it might be months, might be weeks, might be years. My grandfather, poor guy, man, I swear to God, he was very successful, worked for GE, well-liked. I mean, he had people from his company come to his funeral after he'd been retired for decades. And that really impressed me. That said, man, he made an impression on people that they would actually come to his funeral.
Yeah.
And had lots of money, very successful, but just miserable as all get out, and drank like a fish. And the last 5 years of his life, he was not the full-blown alcoholic, right? I don't think he had the full genes, right? But he had the alcoholism to the point where it affected his how long you live,
Yeah.
quality of life kind of deal. And for the last 5 years of his life, he laid in a bed, basically with Alzheimer's, calling out for the nurse, not knowing where he was or what day it was. And I would go over to visit my grandmother and give her support, and he'd be back there going, nurse, 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 all day long. Put me out of my misery.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll go out on a limb on that one too. Don't we take our dogs to the shelter and put them down when it's time for them to go? Don't we?
We do.
Because we love our dogs, but we don't love our grandparents.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. Hey, I'll do it. I'll challenge it. We're on the mic. Let's do it. Hey, by the way, if anybody ever says anything that gets your damn attention and upsets you, I say one word. You ready for this? Good. You know what that does? It resets you. You cannot hit a bullseye within a person if there's not a bullseye to be hit. And I can't tell you how many meetings I go to and I speak and people get all upset and they miss the freaking message. You're not supposed to just sit there and enjoy this talk and laugh and say, well, that was great, and forget all about it. You're supposed to be challenged, right? Give me something that feeds me, something that helps me to grow, something I can take home and chew on. And if somebody upsets you, that's the gold standard. That means something has hit your bullseye so deep inside that you need to run, not walk to your sponsor and say, what the hell is this all about? Make me do my inventory work so I can find out what I'm supposed to learn from this.
When your core gets rocked.
Because it's not about the speaker. I don't even know you. I'm a stranger, right? And somehow I said something from my experience that made you go, oh, you shouldn't say that.
I've heard more than a couple times of people going, that damn dude in that one meeting.
Oh, I've gotten that myself.
That thing is
That guy, the guy with the hair. Yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
The counselor dude. Oh, yeah, we know about him.
They don't know that you're my sponsor when they tell me that stuff, you know. And I'll stay there and say, yeah, that's my sponsor. Then you hear, oh.
Truth. Human beings don't like truth. You ready for this one? We put to death the people that tell us the truth. Our spiritual leaders, the ones we look at as our masters, we put them to death. They tell us the truth. We don't want to hear.
Yeah.
So, what do you want to talk about now?
You know, what we did do was dig around a lot on all the reasons why we want to do this. Because
Dan's got a juice on for those of you at home who can't see it. It says got juice.
Got juice.
What does that mean, Dan?
Well, that means I have juice in my life. I have been free from many of these afflictions you talked about, which I certainly struggled with for most of my entire life. You know, and I know that. You know, I was like you said, like the people you said the other day, I was different. You know, you had a problem, you had a problem, you had a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But I was managing this thing and I was okay, and I'll show you proof of that. I've held a job for a long, long time. I've got a nice house. I've got 2 cars in the garage. I've got 2 kids. My parents are still married. You know, all the different things I could point to in the physical things, it showed you that I didn't have a problem because all that stuff was okay.
And let me add to that. Pause for a second. And you understand I'm smarter than you guys. I've been through much, much more than you guys have been through. Man, if you knew what happened to me in the past, then you truly understand. I am on it. I cannot relate. You guys gotta understand. I'm totally different than you guys.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Continue.
Yeah, exactly. And but it finally ended up, you know, like so many of these things, and that's where I wonder about how the problem, the blessing that was bestowed on me was that bottom. Was that coming to a wall where I slapped it hard enough to get my attention, similar to what you were saying a minute ago. Same kind of effect as when you rock somebody with your speech and you say something to them and they have to like stop and think about
That's
that.
your angel, man. He just got your attention.
Right. So when I whacked that wall, then I was able to have that moment of clarity we're talking about, and I said be open to some change and be looking and going, looking at myself, just like that paragraph I just read a minute ago when we opened about something is freaking wrong, and I don't know what it is, but I have to start doing something about it. And I did, you know. So I got to you know, in the last, we talked a little bit ago, and I don't know if it was on the tape or not. I don't think it was, about the miracle list I carry around. There's a podcast that talks that I recorded that having to do with that, you know. And today, sitting here around this book and having a pile of them, we got 4 of them sitting on the table and talking about the beginning of this movement is another piece of my miracle, you know, being able to put these podcasts out. Because actually the podcasts are not on my list yet, now that I think about it. that needs to be added to the list. Because in
Absolutely.
the past 4 years, I've had so many miracles happen that when I get them out and I put them on the table and show them to you and you don't know me, you think I'm full of shit.
So let me use your example for the listener, Dan, because, you know, I've been kind of going off, and I do that, and I know I'm hard to understand, so let me make it really simple for you guys. I met this guy 4 years ago, and it was a mercy mission. It was not my choice to sponsor him, again, being connected with higher power when he opened up that night in that room that he talks about in the miracle story. There was a voice in my head that said, help this man. I mean, literally, it was loud. It was like, throw him a lifeline. Help this man. And I made a beeline for you and said, I'm gonna sponsor you. It was like you were drowning. That's what I heard that night, literally going under for the last time.
You never really paid a lot of attention to me other times. I was trying to get your attention, but I couldn't really get your
Well,
attention.
it's
And then
'cause you weren't
after
telling
that-
me your
yeah,
truth
Because
yet.
I wasn't
You were
able, I
dancing
didn't
around
make
your
myself
truth.
open to the help yet.
You were
know,
dancing around your
and
truth.
then when I
And
laid
boy,
my
did you
cards
lay it
on
out
the
there
table.
that night, you were like, okay, here's what's going on.
Yeah, and then boom, there you were.
There's the help. It's the same way with God.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Right, we dance around this, God doesn't exist, my ego this, my self-will that, you know, but until you get broken down, you really need it. Bill says that in the big book. It's a very interesting line, you know, we find that God is there when we really need him or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why it's like that, it just seems to be that way.
So I don't know if you want to or not, but I think it would be good to like at least touch on.
Let me finish my point though. So I met this guy 4 years ago.
Oh, yeah. Me, let's talk about me. That's a
Dan.
good topic.
The guy that got Jesus' shirt on. And if you don't believe this stuff works, he didn't. And he
No, it
was
did not.
giving me that doggy don't understand look all the time. I talk about that in my book. Where if you have a dog at home, if you make a funny noise and go or something like that, your dog will look at you like, what?
Tilts that head.
Yeah, he'll cock his head and say, what are you doing? And the absolute miracle of change and transformation in your life over 4 years, nobody can put into words. Even all the people in our group, it's not you. You have a very good humility, and it's not an ego saying, hey, look what I did. The power of this program that God could reach through to a guy who was lost, completely lost. No sense of what works, no sense of his center, no sense of his truth. To become a guy today that is finding him. I mean, if I had told this man in front of me that 4 years ago on his first night, hey, guess what? You're gonna take yoga training to be a yoga instructor one day. And you would have looked at me like, you gotta be, I'm out of here, right?
Yeah.
Because we are afraid of our truth. That's not me, that's not the real me. Oh, God forbid, that's not the, is that what a man does? Oh no, a man doesn't do yoga.
Yeah.
What?
I mean, all kinds of reasons why that was.
I love that scene, Fight Club, awesome stuff, where they get on the bus and Edward Norton looks up at the ad for the Calvin Klein, and all it shows is a man's perfect torso with his little undies on there. And he says to Brad Pitt, so that's what a man's supposed to look like? That's what we're talking about, folks, this programming they put into us, which our parents, by the way, and grandparents did not have at all. I talk about that in the book a lot, about, you know, the advertising back in the day. And my dad was an advertising man, so I was on the ground floor. I mean, he was on the crew that came up with Tony the Tiger and Charlie the Tuna Fish and the Pillsbury Doughboy and the Marlboro Man. I mean, he worked for Leo Burnett in Chicago, number 3 advertising agency in the country at the time. And it used to be back in the day, they would just say, well, we have the lowest prices, or we've got the best product and all that stuff. They didn't try to get into your psyche. They didn't try to get into, oh, how does this product reflect me? Is this me? Is this an expression of my personality? You need this because this will complete you as a person, not because it's a good product. We didn't have any of that till 60s, 70s, which is the time we all grew up in. And our kids today are getting bombarded left and right. They don't even know who they are. I feel really sorry for them.
Media explosion, the TV explosion.
And what are we seeing? Epidemics of anxiety,
Yeah, everybody's got anxiety.
teenage suicide, which is so sad that we're not doing enough for our kids, that they're killing themselves. Are you kidding me? Or they're going in and shooting each other. Why are we not teaching them spiritual tools? And what's really cool is when we get some in the program, it's like, you know what? I am not going to let my kid get ruined by this world. I'm going to teach them meditation from age 4. This is quiet time. Sit down with me. Learn how to reflect. Learn how to take time to unplug. Turn off your damn phone every now and then. You don't need to be so plugged in. That's the system. That's the BuzzFeed. That's the Matrix, whatever you want to call it. So where did you want to go? I just had to put that, because guys, you got to understand, this guy's a miracle sitting across me over here. These tools work.
So that's where I was wanting to talk about with some of the actual tools. So that,
Yeah.
we've got these things going on. We know we've got this sickness. I've been convinced of that. I know that's one of my ways I convey it. That usually, I actually had a guy the other day that kind of caught me on my heels a little bit when I can tell this story to people, and I say, you do believe you have a soul or a spirit, right? Because I'm trying to break that religion thing and get away from that, but I'm trying to tell them about this work.
Or if you just want to use it like core energy of who and what you are.
So that's what this guy
We all
did
hear
the other
this
day.
voice in our head that talks to us, right?
Yeah.
What is that? Our consciousness,
Yeah.
right? We have that over animals. We have this consciousness of able to see things. I read this thing yesterday that what separates us, a French psychologist or somebody nailed it, said it's symbology. That we associate meaning with things and connect those meanings that animals can't do on that level, right?
Yeah, right.
So that teddy bear you have sitting over there, you have a lot of memories with that teddy bear, right? And you're able to, that's a symbology for you.
Yeah, yeah. So this guy said, no, I don't believe I have a soul or spirit. And it was the first time somebody actually gave me that answer. I was a little bit rocked back. I was like, because everybody so far, everybody that I have posed that question to would agree that they have some kind of spirit, some kind of soul inside of them. And so he argued with me for a few minutes, not really arguing, but, we just bantered back and forth, because I was a little bit stopped, and he said, but I do believe I have an essence. I said, okay, we will go with that.
Words.
Words. Yeah. It's funny how, that's another great line in the book, that don't let the words that you hear prejudice you.
Yeah.
That these don't get wound up in these order that we put these characters, these funny shaped characters.
Words are so powerful. We go to war over words
Yeah.
and labels and things, and it's stupid, right? It doesn't even really matter what Shakespeare said, a rose by any other name, right? It doesn't matter what you call it. It still is what it is.
So what I was going with was how do we get free? How do these tools work? Because I think that people who are going to listen to this today are going to want to know that. We've kind of talked about all and I've already got this from a few different angles, was the doom and gloom angle. That all this doom and gloom is laying out there, so okay, I can accept that, but now what do I do, right? We know, me and you and the people in this room know these tools work, but to some extent, I want these people that are listening to us today, because they're going to tune into this later on tonight and other times in these recordings and these podcasts, and I know that's part of the reason why I'm doing this. I didn't know why I was doing those nicotine quitting videos a couple years ago when I started down that path.
I thought you were just having fun.
I was, it really was. I was just having fun, and they really were fun.
It was
There's
training, is what it was.
150 YouTube videos out there that are
That's
centered
insane.
around my
Dan the
inaugural sword.
Man, DTM Enterprises,
Yeah.
all over the internet.
Doggone hunt.
Now known as Lieutenant Dan.
Yeah.
And I gotta keep up with him. He's always got a different name.
So I was putting those videos out, and then we got around to talking about this podcast, and so now I can see, like I said, I've got some vision today a little bit, and I don't overthink
I
it too
can get
bad,
it.
but I see us coming to this podcast that, this is another
Like,
tool
how do you
to
do
allow to
this?
spread this word
How do you
out
do
to the
this stuff?
universe.
Where do I
That's
get
what we're
started?
doing, starting today.
Yeah, I think I hear the question you're saying is, okay, we talk about the doom and gloom and about why we're doing all this, but we had a great friend of ours in the program named Father Martin. He's no longer with us. And he has this line that how can I get well if I don't first admit I'm sick? Now, how do I know I'm sick? Go back to that picture of yourself. Imagine that 4 or 5-year-old kid was here today. Imagine he's standing in the room in front of you. Imagine he's looking at you and watching you throughout your day. You go to your workplace, you have your relationships, interactions with your kids and your family.
Which, by the way, your little kid is on the cover of this book.
Yeah, that's my little dude right there. That's a cut-off version on the website. I've got the full picture of me in my little shorts and my little kid, my little bust brown shoes and whatever the hell I'm wearing.
And when you turn the page, you'll see that that's what's explained here, is that that's the picture pre-programming.
Yeah. But if your kid was watching you and how you interact in traffic and with your fellows and what you eat and how you take care of yourself, how you self-talk to yourself, would they even like what they see? Or would they say, what the hell has happened to you? What's happened to us? What's changed? And that's the question mark to begin on. How am I different than where I started out? And do I like the changes? You don't have to accept them. You don't have to go down with the ship and say, well, that's just the way it is. And a lot of people in my therapy group, and this is common for any therapy group, like to say, well, I'm over all that stuff. I dealt with that a long time ago. Nothing makes me laugh more in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous than when a guy says, I'm over my dad issues. I'm like, no, you're not. No, you're
That
not.
doesn't bother me at all.
No, you're not. Even if you've done the work, you are free. But there's these thing called core wounds, and for every man, their dad is a central figure in their life, and so it's never entirely gone. Would they like what they see? Or would they say, what, we need to change, you need to look at this, something's wrong. And the first step says, can you fix this by yourself? Or as, the Russell Brand version says, are you fucked? And step 2 and 3, can you unfuck yourself, basically?
Yeah.
Meaning that I'm sick and I don't know what to do. I know there's something wrong inside. I don't even know where to begin to try and change my ways. Look at your behaviors, right? I still have crazy ass behaviors that every day I watch myself in my program, like, you don't just get healed from all that stuff, right? That's the cool thing about sobriety. We don't have gurus that are above being human. You do have to occasionally take a crap every now and then and fail and do stupid stuff, and that's what we do, right? So I'll go to the grocery store, right? And I'll say, okay, do not buy crappy food. Do not buy crappy food. You do not need to take it home. If it's home, you're gonna eat it, and you don't need that. It's not good for you. And I look at my shopping cart when I get to the checkout, and I'm like, what the hell is it? Why is that in your shopping cart? That little bag of chips.
I said I wasn't gonna do this again.
Yeah, there's your sickness, habit. Why am I doing this over and over? You're looking at your cigarette and saying, I know this is killing me. I said that to my patients the other day, and I try really hard not to harp on that, except to spark the light of one person in there who might be like, I'm ready to quit, right? Maybe save their life, because if I hadn't quit in my first year of sobriety, I'd be dead today. Right. I have 3 medical conditions that, for a fact, nicotine would have, the effects of smoking would have killed me today. But I'll say to them, while you're out there on break and smoking your cigarette out there on the deck outside, look at that thing and you know it's killing you, right? Why are you smoking it? Why are you doing that? What got in your head to program you to tell you that that was a good thing or that that's cool? Same thing with drinking, right? Anybody that has their first drink and says, I liked it from the beginning, I'm always like, I don't know, dude.
Yeah, I don't buy that either.
Everybody I know says, that tastes like crap.
Yeah.
That beer tastes like piss, and that whiskey burns. And even that smoke the first time when you cough your guts out, and you're like, what the hell? Your body's telling you that doesn't belong in there. So then you start training yourself. Well, this is what we do through practice. And all of a sudden, then it begins to taste good.
Yeah, I saw a guy the other day just talking about enjoying his nicotine. I enjoy my nicotine, I just accepted that. Okay.
Do you enjoy getting up every morning and coughing your guts out?
Yeah.
Do you enjoy being
myself
short-winded when you
one day
try and run up the stairs? Do you enjoy it affecting your sex life? Maybe if you're an old guy and your circulatory system is constricted because that's what smoking does.
I'm willing to sacrifice all that.
I get it. I'm an addict. I totally get it.
Right.
But again, how much of that is me? Or how much of that is my programming, is that false self, right? As an addict or an alcoholic, we have this dual identity. Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde is what Bill called it. For you modern kids, I used to like to call it Professor Clump and Buddy Love from the movie The Nutty Professor. 2 totally different personalities, right? Well, which one's the real you? Which one would your kid agree with? Right? That's what I'm talking about. Would your kid agree with that smoking? I doubt it.
Yeah, no.
Try to give a kid a cigarette. Try to give a 5-year-old kid a cigarette and have them say, what is wrong with you? Why do you guys even do that? Well, but I do that because something changed. Something inside of me was taught to me, mirrored for me, role modeled for me, and suddenly I'm now incorporating that into my personality, and I say that's me, just like that guy who says I like it.
Yeah.
That's me, that's my identity. Is it really?
It's an attachment to self.
And you will not know whether it's your real identity or not until you do inventory, which is step 4. You gotta get in there and really dig in deep to find out the roots of this programming and who gave me these messages, right? Who was the one that put this programming inside of me? Mom, dad, the preacher, the teacher, whoever it was that did that.
Get in there, dissect the computer.
So the first step is admitting that I've got this illness, and then the second step says basically, can you fix yourself? And the example I use in the book is like a guy who has a heart surgeon. If you were walking down the street and you saw a heart surgeon laying on the sidewalk trying to cut himself open to operate on himself with a heart surgery, you'd say, what a freaking idiot, dude, what are you doing there? And yet every single person out there
I need emergency heart surgery.
Every single human being out there right now who's listening, you know somebody or you yourself are doing this, you're working on your own problems.
Yeah.
I got this, I don't need therapy, I don't need a teacher, I don't need a guide, I can fix myself.
I'm working on me.
Because, what I used to tell myself is because I know myself better than anybody else is ever going to know me. I don't trust a therapist to really know me, so I can fix myself. And then the third step says, would you be willing to do our program to try and get better? A lot of people get hung up on that word. It's the 30s. I think it's important that we look at the time of when Bill wrote all that. They were Judeo-Christian, ethic-based people. They knew what they knew. Again, no internet, no Oprah, no New Age thought, no none of that stuff, right? Even Emmett Fox was radical in his time, and they had him, but even that was stretching the boundaries. He was pretty traditionally based too, if you read his teachings. The third step says, turn your life and will over. What we say in the program is, will you give me a little bit of rope as your sponsor and let me take you through this process? Would you start writing an inventory? Because the first 3 steps is just a decision. You gotta make up your mind. You're gonna give this a fair try. A, I think I got this problem. I don't know how to define it, don't know what it is, but I know something's wrong. B, I cannot fix this. I've been trying for 50, 40, 30 years, however old you are. I've been trying, nothing's changed. I'm still repeating those old patterns, putting the chips in the shopping cart, ended up at the freaking checkout and saying, why am I doing this? Still smoking, whatever the deal is. And then, okay, I'm gonna give this a fair try. Let me dig out a pad of paper and follow the directions and do everything they tell me to do. And that's when the miracle happens, right? In our program, it's a long tradition of people fearing the 4-step or being overwhelmed by the 4-step. The 4-step is actually the most amazing, wonderful step in the entire program because you get to find out your truth.
Right.
It's the search for the truth. What happened to me? How did I become this? How did I end up on this path?
How did I get here?
I'm way off path with what I wanted to accomplish in my life. I'm working for some corporation in a cubicle every day. You told me about Cubicle City yesterday. I'm dying underneath this fluorescent light. How did I end up here? I've got to make some very serious, major decisions to change. Otherwise, I'm going to be too late, and I won't be able to change.
The 70-year-olds or whatever.
I have so many people in my group who work for a major corporation in our town that I won't state the name, and they hate it. The environment is toxic. They call it hell, and they talk about selling out their souls just to get that pension, and they'll work there for 30 years just to get that pension.
Yeah.
Why? This is your one and only mortal existence on this planet. It goes by pretty fast. I'll be 57 this year. I can't believe that myself. It goes by fast. Why am I not taking the time to reevaluate? And that's what the 4-step does for you. You get the chance to see it all on paper. Do I want to continue to walk this path? Do I want to continue to carry this stuff in my can? Or do I want to dump it in 5 and move on and begin a whole new path for myself and start to accomplish the goals of what I want to do with my life?
Yeah, I really like that garbage can analogy. I was talking about it this morning, that we were walking along with this backpack, this garbage can with backpack straps on it, and
right
I've got it, and I'm walking, and everything I've been
everything that's ever happened to you, folks,
is getting picked up and put in the can.
Because the brain works like that, right? We know this from neuroscience. You never forget nothing. Everything's filed in your computer banks.
Yeah.
The brain is the greatest supercomputer that exists. It remembers every damn detail of everything that ever happened to you, even when you're saying it doesn't bother me today.
And it's just like the bad apple thing, when you put the bad apple in there and you put this stuff, even with the good things you're putting in there, we just can't help it to bump it. We're going to, like the other book says about the calamity and the things we're gonna run into in our life, the trauma, different things that I have to do something with, and I basically I have really no choice but to pick them up and put them in my can.
Mm-hmm.
Before long,
Because I have time to deal with it today,
Yeah,
right? I gotta work my job, I gotta pick up the kids. I can't deal with that right now, I'll deal with it later.
Right.
We never go back to deal with it,
No,
probably.
and the can gets filled up, and I always think about this other analogy, like it's got this sludge in it. I got that from Scott L, that he talks about that, the sludge in it, and it's spilling around.
Which word is Scott Hill? Thank you for everything you do. You are a
Absolutely.
major soldier of this program, dude. I mean, I put him at the top.
It was another one of the speakers that I had started listening to when I met you through from another contact. Somebody else turned me on to him, but
Really?
he actually got turned on to it from you.
Oh, cool.
So that triangle thing, so I told you about
There's
listening
very
to
few
him. You're like, I
favorites.
love him. But
I have, but him and Keith L, I think, are two of our giants
Yeah,
who
absolutely.
carry this message and how to do this deal.
So I've got this can of stuff sloshing around with me all the time, and I can smell it. Everywhere I go, I can smell it.
Yeah, it's that
Until
little,
I stink,
to be clear with people out there, it's not overt, right? It's this little nagging voice inside that's telling you, yeah, I'm just a little bit irritable today, I'm just a little bit, that's,
That
me.
little thing about not being able to fit in, not being
Like
able to
somebody
be
comes
part
into
of
the
it.
office on Monday morning, how you doing? It's Monday. Yeah, well,
Hang it in there.
you know why it's Monday? It's because you got this can of shit you're carrying around everywhere. Yeah.
And then I walk around and I think you can smell it too.
Mhm.
You know, because when I splash it around, and then when I go places, it sloshes out on the floor over there. And I
Okay,
stumped
so
up
let's be
that
real
place
clear
a
about
little
this for
bit.
the listeners. We call it unfinished business.
There you go.
This is all my stuff that I've not cleaned up or taken care of or gotten rid of or even looked at or inventoried, and I don't even know I'm carrying it.
Yeah.
Like something that happened in freaking football camp when I was 15 years old. I mean, I had a guy in my group just recently, he's like 70 odd years old, right? He's been through the program before, he had worked the steps. I said, so what's wrong, why are you back? And I'm like, so, you know, what about your inventory process? And I think he told me he had something like 12 names on his inventory. I'm like, what? And he went through my group and listened to my little ramblings, and he says, you mean, and he did, he stopped me in group one day, he says, you mean when I'm talking about these bullies that used to just pick on me mercilessly when I was a kid, they would literally come to my house and abduct me and make me do what they tell me to do, that should be on my 4-step? I said, dude, how many times have you brought that up in my group since you've been in here? Even last time when you were in my group, you were talking about that. How old are you now? And he goes, well, I'm just talking. Yeah, that's the point.
Yeah.
If it comes out of your mouth, you ain't done with it yet. It's unfinished business. It still bugs the crap out of you, and your ego is telling you, oh no, that's silly. I'm a man now. Why would I be
Get over
worried about
that.
something that happened to me at 12 years old? He even had a story where he met with those guys in a bar later and he popped them.
Yeah.
So he had his little moment of victory, and yet he was still not free.
Or
He
they-
said he felt great after popping them, but it didn't last, right?
Yeah.
Still bugged him what they did to him when he was 12.
Yeah, that's the same thing about those, you know, that was what was happening when I was bullied at the basketball court, not being allowed to leave. You know,
Mhm.
I mean, not physically forced, but, yeah, so, and another thing we tell each other is, you know, that stuff happens to everybody.
Yeah.
That, you know, and it
Just
doesn't
get
make.
over it.
Yeah, I should just, you know, hell, that's just life. Shit happens,
Hmm.
you know?
Well, okay, so let's talk about that aspect. We're talking about finding my truth. We all, as human beings, understand the concept that everybody has a different physical pain tolerance, right? You know, some people, like for instance, I was a kid, I had allergy shots every 2 weeks, or twice a week, literally, living in the Ohio Valley here, anybody that lives here understands. And so needles, no big deal, stick me all night long. I don't, you know, I still go today when they do infusions, they say, oh, here comes the hit. I'm like, whatever, just stick me up. And then you show another person a needle and they faint, right?
Right.
Different pain tolerances, different, you know, but we also have different emotional tolerances. So two people can go through the same exact experience and have a totally different result. We know this from our soldiers, from being in battle, PTSD. Two soldiers can be there for the same exact blast event, same exact trauma, and one comes out completely destroyed for the rest of their life, and the other one has a brain that doesn't react that way, right?
Yep.
It's not in our power, it's just part of genetics, right? So when we're saying, well, just get over it, everybody goes through that. Yeah, but I went through that.
Yeah.
And to me, this was my truth, right? And you talked about in the story with Nick, we're not trying to indict anybody because that's futile. We're not trying to blame people, right? Don't misunderstand. Blaming your parents or blaming anybody doesn't get you anywhere. It gets you to the bar real fast.
Yeah.
Gets you to a dope man's house real fast with resentment. What we're trying to do is, what was my experience in that system? What was my real truth that I've been denying to myself? How did I feel growing up in a family where they didn't listen to me? Where I was sort of the lost child and that just sort of in the background, or in a family where I had to deal with an alcoholic father who didn't know what kind of mood he was gonna come home in. Yeah, everybody goes through that, right?
Yeah.
Now, what was my experience? And could that possibly be playing that fear? I'll just use one example, that fear of apprehension, not knowing what to expect. How could that be playing some role in my worldview today? That now I'm fearing that out of nowhere, well, I'm gonna go there, here we go. Some brown person is gonna come across the border and steal my job because I got this fear that my security is gonna be taken out from under me that's actually related to my alcoholic father, and not knowing whether or not we were gonna be living in that house because dad might lose his job again.
Yeah.
Literally, those roots go deep. And then the events that happen today are just triggers. Whatever happens in the news today, that's a trigger, but it can't, like I said earlier about hitting the bullseye, it can't affect you unless there's already some sort of bullseye inside you, embedded in you to hit. And unless I see those things, or as Bill Wilson calls it, the causes and conditions,
Right.
I'm doomed to repeat them for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And how easy is it for us to see in our friends? It's like, well, you need to work on this, or you need to change this.
Yeah, right, we can see it in everybody else real quick, you know?
But I'm fine, you know, I don't need to work on nothing myself.
That's exactly the same thing that goes on when we talk about people with this book here, and
Mhm.
when we say, like, present it to somebody, and they know somebody needs it. You know,
Mhm.
not me, I don't need it, but I do know somebody that
So let's
needs
get
it.
this clear, man, you're only cheating yourself. To me, I feel so sorry for the world. I really do. The general reaction I've experienced over the years when you tell people in your recovery, there's actually people who will go, oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
And I look at them and I'm like, no, really, actually, I'm sorry for you motherfuckers because you don't have the solution in your life. And you guys are running around like scared rabbits out there and you don't even know what's wrong with you. You don't. You have no clue what's even wrong with you. We're so lucky to have this deal, man.
It certainly is a blessing. I did used to look at my disease or the alcoholism, the bottom, as a curse, and really today, absolutely, without question. It's the
Well,
best
without that
blessing I've
dark
ever
night of the
experienced.
soul for every person throughout history, nobody grows.
Right.
All of our teachers, every single one, whether it's the Buddha going out and learning about suffering,
Yep.
whether it's Apostle Paul falling off his horse, and we still don't know whether that was the drink or the woman or what the hell he was doing that was supposed to be a sin, so supposedly. His moment of crisis, his dark night of the soul, where he
Right.
turned to something else and said, help me! And I don't know what's going to take for you folks out there, but you're going to have some sort of experience. No human being gets through this thing called life without these experiences. You might lose a child to an illness. You might have an economic downturn and lose your freaking 401k and be out of your house. Something's going to happen where you're going to have to seek other help.
Yeah.
And if it hasn't happened to you, beware, it might be coming.
I do joke, around about, seems to be these certain people that do seem to slide by. I don't quite understand, I don't get it, but
I
it's a
don't know,
vast,
that's
it's
hard
a
to-
very minority, maybe it's just.
I feel you,
covered
I
over
feel
a
you.
little bit.
I'll say that, I'll agree with you, but then again, we don't know what's going on behind their head,
Right.
in their soul,
Yeah.
and behind closed doors.
Yeah.
We unfortunately in America, we judge people by the appearances, right?
Right.
So you're driving a nice car, your lawn looks well manicured and all that, we don't know what's going on in their real life.
That's where I was going to, that everybody has to some level, some of this stuff underlying, and the more that I walk down this path and be exposed to people who do like fifth steps and things like that, and hearing other people's
Oh my
stories.
God, aren't
and
they all
sharing
the
stuff.
same, these fifth steps?
Yep, they are generally all the same, and everybody has these things underneath of them, so now, to some extent, and then not to mention that I have a support group and people who are willing to share their true stuff with each other, so it's not just the intimacy of the fifth step where I'm hearing these things, I'm hearing them just from you and me and our buddies and people are talking, that all this stuff is underneath of there, so now when I see somebody else and I see them hurting, instantly I'm going, what is under there? What is under there? And that's what these tools do, is help somebody get to what that pattern of what we've been doing while we're in this rut. I love the little joke I like to hear is that, when you're in a rut, the best thing about being in a rut is that somebody was there before. Because there's not a rut without others passing by.
Marion, my
There's a way
spiritual
out.
teacher, said the only difference between a rut and a grave is the depth of it.
Yeah.
Because you can get stuck in a rut. So after that process, to sum it up real quick, you write the stuff on paper, best you can, you puke it out, you don't analyze.
Great instructions on how to do it in here, the
Detail.
exact manual.
Detail,
Do this,
man,
do that,
one step
do
at a
this, do
time.
that. Read this, do this, come back to the book in a little while.
Yeah.
When you're
and
done
do
with
the
that,
next
come
step.
back and start here again.
And then you take that all to another person who's spiritually attuned, somebody who's had some development, and you take that before your whatever belief you have in some kind of a higher power. It could be the spirit of the universe, it could be music, it could be anything you can't explain that's outside yourself that gives you passion or makes you feel more whole inside, safer inside, more comfortable, warm. That's like my sponsor, he has the best definition of a higher power. He says, when I was 4 years old, anything that made me feel warm and fuzzy inside, and I'm not talking about dope, anything that makes me feel genuinely,
Right.
authentically warm and fuzzy, he said, that's my higher power. He says, my higher power is my grandkid.
Yeah.
He comes over and he plays, and I am just like, that's God right there to me. And you dump all that stuff. You take your trash can, you pour it all out. You don't go through it yourself because you've been trying to sort it out your entire life. And this other soul who's attuned, using this extra power that's with you guys on this journey, suddenly answers come, patterns emerge.
Yeah.
You'll see this roadmap that you've been following, that you have a choice then. You can either keep following it or you can burn it. Let it go and move on.
Right, yeah.
And that's only halfway through the process, right?
That is, yep, step 5. So then, also just to circle back to the book, in there we've got things, because like you said, you gotta find this person that's attuned, right? So you talk about how to find that person here, and another tool is why we're having these meetings, because we will have a gathering of
Yeah.
souls who are
And that's
capable
again,
of
I'm gonna
starting
put
to
that,
do that.
I've
play
gotta put
role.
that invitation out there, Dan. We need soldiers.
Yep.
There are people who
We got a
have the
pretty good base.
solution. We
We
do.
need more.
But I'm talking beyond Louisville though.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah, absolutely.
We need people who are willing to take this challenge and say, I'm going to help others. I have the solution. I know how to do a fifth step. I know how to guide somebody through their 9-step. Let me start a meeting.
Yeah.
Get somebody else. That's really the easiest way to do it. I've got you, Lieutenant Dan, my sidekick. You've got to have another soldier beside you to start this kind of endeavor. It's really hard to do all just by yourself.
Yeah, right.
And get another person in the program, talk to them, say, hey, there's this crazy ass book. This guy's probably full of shit. And don't even agree with everything he says. Actually, it's pretty good. And he starts reading it.
Well, it says clear-cut directions, and that's what we've said about the other book, right? But it's really, we talked about that, most of those directions are tribal knowledge. They're not.
Bill
we
did a
built it,
phenomenal, miraculous job for a guy with 2 years sobriety. And as I say in the book, he couldn't have written the nursery rhyme with all the alcohol damage he'd done to his
Right.
brain. And somehow he wrote this amazing text, which has everything we need to know for then. Now we have this wisdom over 80+ years that these other guys have said, when you're in the trenches doing the work, we have found if you do it this way, you get the better result.
Yeah, here's the good way to do it.
If you
Here's
do
a
it
really
this
good
way, you
to do it.
get an okay result. And I did the steps really half-assed when I first started, and I got a fairly good, happy, joyous, and free. But I didn't get this,
Right.
that 8-cylinder Hemi engine stuff. And that's what's exciting for me. And I'm just going to say this to you: you've got sponsees that you started out on this deeper level stuff.
Right.
You're taking them through the steps.
Yeah.
The book wasn't even out yet, guys, but he's using the tribal knowledge that I imparted onto him.
Exactly.
And these guys have 4 or 6 months, and they're walking into meetings, and people are like, you seem like you've got 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
Because of this advanced level, deeper level recovery.
Yeah.
And by the way, we haven't even talked about that definition of recovery. And even as I was writing this book, I didn't even know really what it meant. I thought I knew what it meant, and for some reason I started sticking my head in the dictionary a lot when I was writing the book, go figure. And I said, gee, I never looked up the word recovery. What the hell does recovery mean? And I looked it up, and I love the definition. It says to go back and reclaim that which has been lost. Reclaim, not regain, reclaim, saying, I want this.
Yeah.
That which has been lost, which of course I talk about in the books. That leaves the question, so what's been lost? And I say, look at your kid's eyes.
Yeah.
Are you walking around like that today, or are you walking around miserable?
Right. You gave me that assignment early on too, and it was another one of those ones where for whatever reason, there was something in my heart that was telling me just to do what you told me to do. That was a 2 gift also, there was that Jekyll Hyde thing. The other voice was also saying this is a bunch of bullshit, it's not gonna work. But I had a gift where I went home and opened up a photo album my mother had given me, and it was chronological. So it started with baby pictures of the kind of baby pictures in the hospital baby picture. And it went through to a first birthday and on and on and on up until whenever I think it's ended someplace in my late teens, early 20s, And I started at the back of that photo album and started turning the pages backwards, and I could see, but I really didn't notice that until I got to the page where the lights were on in the kid's eye. And I remember flipping it back and forth. I could turn the page
Huge
like I
change,
flipped it,
right?
and I could see the difference in between these 2 kids, from the eyes being lit up and the sparkle in them to the darkness. And I also know there was an event in my life around that same time. Today I know that.
Sure.
When I saw that picture, I didn't know. I couldn't.
Not only do
pull
you
that
know
out
it,
either.
but you've given it the credence it deserves. That's why I talk about my truth. You've honored it. Yes, this is what happened to my kid. And I am going to go back and reclaim him. I'm going to go save him. Nobody else in my life did that.
Yeah.
Who else in our lives cared that much? We had angels occasionally. We had people that helped us despite the madness around us. But how many people were going to be on our side to go back and reclaim like a crew of soldiers going into some foreign territory to extract a soldier, right? And we're going to get you out safely, right?
Yeah.
Doing that for your kid,
Right.
who's been abandoned. Because most of us don't even walk around and even think our kid exists. Or like this guy, we've allowed the institutions of man to convince us our soul doesn't exist. And the reason, folks, why they don't want us to believe it exists is because you're only a number to them. I hate to tell you that. You're a bank account. You're
It wasn't too
you're
long
a
ago
dollar
that
amount.
word hit me real good.
And
Work that I
what
am.
you can buy and what labels you wear is all you are to the systems and institutions, right?
And that
So the soul doesn't
department
exist. That other part of you doesn't exist. You're just a consumer in the eyes of the world of man.
And every one of our employers has got a department dedicated to dealing with us. It's called human resources.
So,
Nothing but a resource.
I saw that picture of myself and my poor sister after my mom's first divorce from my dad, and she married another alcoholic. And there's this picture of us all together, and I have this look like I'm there, but I'm not there, but my sister has this dark cloud over her, and she was older, she was 4 years older than me, so she was probably more exposed to the madness going on. You just see it in this poor kid, man. It's like you're in a gulag, you're in some sort of Siberian prison, abandoned. And that's the way I feel about people, is that's deep down inside of all of us, and we're just letting it fade away.
Yeah, because there is.
Starved to death.
I smell more. There is more than that. Now, I've reached it, I found it, you know, and that other line in there about that, barely scratched on the slowly
Well,
as long as I continue to mind it.
If this
for
helps
my life.
inspire people out there, man, I'm telling you, if you can get this, you're gonna have the best life ever. I'm convinced that this is the prescription for the most successful, most fulfilling life on this planet. Here it goes. It's in a nutshell. A, find out who you are. Find out what's important to you. What's your truth? The most important things that matter to me. What do you value? Get down to those cores. And what do I have to do that? I gotta clear away all this other garbage. I've gotta do inventory. I've gotta get rid of the extra stuff on top.
Clean that
At the
trash
bottom,
can.
what is my most important thing in life? Who am I? What's my truth? Number 2, can I walk it? Can I actually show this truth to the world? Can I cry in front of my fellows? Can I share my warmth? Can I hug other men and not have them wonder, you know? Can I drop all that garbage and share my truth and walk my truth on this planet? This is what's important to me. This is where I'm going. And I don't care, you know, I'm gonna take some slings and arrows from people about the book, but I don't care. I'm gonna walk my truth because this is my path. And 3, can you make money at it? Can you do it for a living? I think there's very few individuals who've accomplished this advanced soul work. They're most of all souls on our planet. And I'm not necessarily saying their spiritual development, but as far as what they've achieved. Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Oprah, the people who have A, what's your truth? What do you stand for? What's most important to you? B, can you walk it? Put it into action every day. Show it to others. And can you make money and do it for a living? And are they not happy? Hell yeah, they're happy. They're not accepting working at a place for 30 years just to get a pension, selling their soul out. But the systems want you to believe that's all you're good for. I know, because I work for a system, and I work for a corporation at the same time, and try to get higher up, and they're gonna say, no, this is the ceiling, this is all you get.
Yeah.
And I can go back like Oliver and Oliver Twist, more, sir, can I please have more? And they're like, no, this is all you get, you're just a cog in a machine.
Yeah.
Break free, man, wake yourself up.
Yeah, they need to keep you there. They need to keep you in that web.
Don't be another cattle in the cattle car, cattle head in the cattle car.
There are resources to get where they're going.
Well, the people in power don't want you to expand.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. You know, I had a little flash, you know, you was talking about finding yourself, you know, in the bottom of that trash can is a picture of that little kid. That's what
Dirty,
finding all that is.
slammed
All that out
down,
there.
bent, dirt, you know, just at the bottom of the trash can, just like if you had left it there for years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So just to, we are at 1 hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to do that I thought would be kind of fun this morning, I wanted to invite our good friend Shane to come join us up here and tell his experience a little bit with the book or with his journey through the steps. We'll just, a little short little deal here. Shane is a good friend of mine that I met along the way after I met Dan, started to sponsor him, and he had been through the steps before with another sponsor, and he was looking for more. You could smell it, you could see it on us. And I said, well, come on board, let's see what happens. And he's got a personal experience with this, and I think that would be helpful for the listeners to, rather than just me rambling on, because they're gonna say, well, of course you think it's good.
Yeah. But this is the point that I thought too, in the beginning of that, of this thing, getting it, you know, I still, actually, after having miracles happen in my life, I still at some level thought it was a fluke.
Mhm.
Until I started seeing other people get it too,
Yeah.
especially when I started being able to actually pass it on and be a part of, you know, carrying this message to other people and see these miracles happen.
Which I tell my
That was
patients-
the concrete proof positive.
We all were in high school at one time, and we learned about the definition of the scientific method. The scientific method is you have a series of constructs, you have a subject, you put this subject through a series of constructs or tests or whatever you're doing, and you get a result. And then you take another subject, you put them through the same deal, you get another result, right? And then as evidence starts to build, you start to say, oh, this is real. This is a real thing, it's something you put faith in. Well, we have this program we've been doing for 80 plus years, man, 83 years. 84, I'm losing track, 84, but it's
Coming up on
about,
84.
just about, yeah. And we take all these lab rats. These are lab rats from every country, every language, every culture, every background. These are
Right.
totally different lab rats. I mean, these are not all the same lab rats.
Yeah.
And we put them through the same construct though, which is the 12 steps. Go through this process, do the entire process, see what happens. And when you come out, we have this change in them, all positive. phenomenal, miraculous, and it happens every time to every single one of them.
Yeah.
So when my patients ask me that silly shit about, I've been on the internet, what are the statistics for alcoholics and addicts making it, and I tell them 100%. 100% you'll fail if you don't freaking do what we tell you to do. If you do this deal, 100% you'll make it.
Yeah.
100%. We don't see anybody not drinking again or drugging again who has really done
You
authentically.
do this and you employ.
And the ones we do see who drink and drug again, always listen for what they always tell us their truth, which is I stopped doing what was working.
Yeah.
And the majority of them I find in my group, when they come back to treatment centers, I wasn't helping others. I wasn't sponsoring other men. I wasn't staying in the deal. So you cheated yourself.
Yeah.
And that's why you used again, because you had to get that juice from somewhere. So anyway, like I said, I want to bring Shane Dog up here. That's why I call him Shane Doggy Doo. He's a good friend of ours, and hang on, folks. He's got a juice load. He's gonna just blow all over this.
Are you just gonna
program
scoot
here.
over a little bit?
I was just gonna get out of the way entirely and let him take the mic.
All right, well, cool. Then,
It's all yours, buddy.
you want? We got a little, someday I'll have like some seating and some, because those chairs are kind of short for this.
That's all right. Feels good. What's up?
Welcome to the table.
Yeah.
Needless to say that I had just finished working on a brand new table. It just come about.
Awesome
It's
table.
My so solid mahogany, piece of mahogany I've been carrying around for 20 years, and now we're sitting over top of it doing this crazy stuff. What recording a podcast had to do with a brand new movement afoot.
Spilling the juice all over it right
Yeah.
off the bat.
And I feel the energy in it.
I can too. It's funny how it all came about at this time, this moment in your life. You've had this piece of wood for 20 years, and look what you manifested it into.
Yeah,
today.
just in the last couple of weeks, somebody was over here helping me, and I saw it sitting over against the wall, and I said, Mike, help me get that out. And then just a few weeks later, here it is.
Yeah, it's amazing. I couldn't wait to see it. I've seen pictures of it, but I knew it'd be something different when I saw it in person. You know what I mean?
So tell me just throw some juice on us, man. What's happened?
Man,
Now, we have heard, y'all have heard Shane too, his stories out there. So if you get a little piece of this today, you can go to Spiritual Underground Podcast, and you can listen to a number of our people who have been through this process and are those proof positive results that Christopher was just talking about, and tell their stories about how they came to this brand new way of life, about this freedom we talk about today. So Shane's stories is out there, so I'd encourage you to go listen to it.
yeah, thank you, man. Yeah, it's a lot of one of the stuff I'm gonna say. I'm gonna kind of break it down to when I first came into treatment. My second day in treatment was when I had somewhat of a epiphany, if you will. Something called me to Christopher. I was sitting in his group and he was talking, and he said something about his book. Didn't know what it was about, nothing at all. And some at that moment, my higher power told me that I was supposed to be part of his book somehow, some way. I had no clue what it was about, but at that moment, 2 days in recovery, something told me I was supposed to be part of this. And I see the results of that today.
Yeah.
It's totally changed my life in a way I could never have imagined. Hey, I'm emotional about it because I'm living the best life I could possibly live today. My wife and I were out to dinner last night, and this is just to prove that this stuff is working. And we were with some friends that I hadn't seen in like a year, and my wife started talking about me and where I am today compared to what I used to be. She said, there's 3 Shanes that I know. She said, there's the Shane I fell in love with, the happy Shane I fell in love with. Then there's the addicted Shane that was just a shell of a person that wasn't there anymore. And then there's this Shane. 100 times different from what I ever knew him to be.
Yeah.
And happy. The happiness level, is 100 times happier than it ever was. I'm still learning about him, is what she said. And I said, I'm still learning about myself, which I am. And it's amazing that I'm still learning about myself, but I open myself up to this because of this book. This book helped me open up myself to realize who the hell I am. Because I was just being what everybody else wanted me to be. But now I'm me today. And it's amazing. I'd asked Christopher to be my sponsor the second day in the Brook because I wanted what he had immediately,
Yeah.
And
A little conflict of interest there.
Yeah, and he said he couldn't because of conflict of interest, you know, and I said, okay. And, but I still wanted what he had, so I stuck by him. I came back for our aftercare things every Thursday, no matter what.
Which you still do?
Still do that today after two years and 4 months. I still do that every Thursday, no matter what, unless I'm out of town. And then I found he had mentioned the Spiritual Underground to me one day. He asked me where I went on Tuesday nights, and he knew where I went on Tuesday nights. That's what threw me at first, you know, because he had told me about this meeting that I'd been going to, and he said, well, you ought to check this one out, Spiritual Underground. I said, all right, you know, I'll do it. And at first I didn't, you know, and a couple weeks later, I think he mentioned it again. I was like, all right, I'll check it out, you know, and came in at night, and there he was there. And that's the night I met you.
Yeah.
You were the first person I met in Spiritual Underground. And when I walked in, I also wanted what you had, and I didn't even know what you had yet, just by your eyes, like Christopher said. We locked eyes, and we had a spiritual connection from the moment I freaking met you.
Yeah, we sure did. I saw you in there, and I do have a thing for people when I see them. There's part of my recovery is that when I see somebody in that meeting that I haven't seen before, A, I know it. You know, I go up and ask you if you've been here before. I've even had some people tell me that they've been there before.
No, you haven't.
4 years plus ago, maybe, but
Yeah,
you've been in there since I've been. Now, I have missed a couple meetings, so there could be a chance that that person
Right.
voted in on those nights. But back to the point, I saw you and immediately knew that, you know, I need to know you in a sense, you know, that deal where you just have a connection. So we've been able to do this for Sponsee Brothers.
Yes, sir.
Kind of this march and this being on this ground floor of this thing, and I think that's probably what lured you, was that knowing, you know, even though like we said, we don't really know,
Didn't
right?
know why.
But there's
Yeah.
something, I can look in the
Gather.
rearview mirror and see that stuff today, you know, I said that, I think maybe in the last podcast, was as I move forward in recovery, also, you know, the clarity I gain moving forward also clears up a lot of what's behind me. I can see that more clearly also. And so like those times, you know, when we hugged that night, you know, because I can still remember that, you know, I mean,
I
like
see
you
it
said,
right
the
now. I
stuff that
feel it
goes
right
in
now,
us
yeah.
and everything. I remember these, that's one other thing about recovery, is you freaking get to remember
Remember
shit.
shit.
That's, so, just, and you've done this before a little bit, so I don't wanna just like go into like
Yeah.
a complete story thing, but the fact of the matter is that you did the steps and you got free to a
Well,
certain level.
Yeah, I did steps with my first sponsor, and I'd already wanted more. You know, I wanted more than what he had, you know, and then Christopher, about almost my year mark, about 11-month mark, I'd asked him again around the 6-month mark. We both prayed on it about sponsoring me, and we both came back with the same conclusion, which was pretty cool, that it wasn't time, you know. And then around the 11th month mark, he came to me and talked to me about it, and I said, yeah, let's do it, you know. And he started telling me what to do. I was like, well, you know what, let's wait till after my birthday. I said, on my birthday, I want my sponsor to give me the honor, you know, give him the honor of giving my 1-year token. He saved my life, you know.
Right.
So he said that's very admirable, so we'll do that. So like a week prior, I got to sit with my sponsor at that time and tell him what my plans were about growing and wanting more, and he thought it was amazing, you know. And I told him on my year, Christopher's gonna become my sponsor. He's like, that's awesome. You know, which was really cool that he wanted to see me grow more too.
Yeah, that's
the
another
way
Scott-
this thing's supposed to be.
That's another Scott L thing is, you know, he says one of his things is he wants his sponsees to outgrow him.
Outgrow me,
You
yeah.
know, I mean, that is really the biggest compliment you could give me, is to continue on that trajectory and need more teaching.
Yeah.
And I've done my job.
Yep. And so, the 1 year started, and Christopher started sponsoring me, and he started giving me a chapter a week. Those manila envelopes you were talking about, yeah, the drug deals in the parking lot kind of deal. And I couldn't wait for every Tuesday night to get the next chapter. I would go home and start reading that night. You know, as soon as I got home, my wife was like, what are you doing? I'm gonna read, you know. And she was usually almost already in bed anyway, so I'd read as long as I could until I got too tired and then I'd go to bed. But I'm a very slow reader. But every week he would give me more and more, and I started working the steps with him in optimal recovery. I don't see how I can be more free today. If there's a way, I don't know how.
Yeah, I keep on saying that too, but you know, I
Yeah.
keep on peeking around every corner, man, and finding something else around
There's
the corner.
always
you know.
more, but
It is.
how can there be more than this?
Yeah, but I get it, yeah, it's like, because I won't settle.
Yeah.
I'm not going to, because I know today that I don't have to do that I am my only limitation, you know, but, you know, if this was it,
Yeah.
Damn, it's a lot.
Yeah, he broke down the steps so perfect, in my opinion.
Yeah.
For me, it was just like, it made it exciting. Like, I couldn't wait to do the next step, the next step, the next step, read more, do the work, and free myself of the bullshit I've been putting on my whole life, you know? And today I feel free, I completely free, I feel like I'm floating. I mean, literally floating on this juice.
And you know, because when I went through with Christopher the first time around, when I went, you know, this stuff wasn't in writing to me, accessible to me anyway, and so it was all a part of, like, you know, some of it was like, where's this at, you know?
Mhm.
I want to see where this is written, you know,
Exactly.
like I needed like some proof that it needed to have some substantiation or some shit for it to work. You know, it wasn't in writing. But now, you know, to have this actually sitting there, and as I read through it later and see those step-by-step instructions, and I was actually working with a guy the other night and taking it to the sex inventory in a 4-step. You know, and I let him, you know, I did everything off my tribal knowledge out of my head, you know. But then I opened up the book and I was kind of just joking because I had it. And the fact of the matter is when I hold that other, the Alcoholics Anonymous book, which is a huge gift in itself, right? It's all, that's the core of all this work, right? That is the seed, the beginning of it. But like I said, here's what we're working out of is this book, but what I'm giving you is this book, and I had Christopher's book in my other hand, you know. So I opened it up and I read it, you know. And the fact is that although I did pass along those instructions pretty damn well, there was a couple things that still, because it's so deep that I said, oh yeah, here, this and this, I had not given it. So now it's in writing, right?
Exactly.
And it's not a matter of missing these important points that are in here, you know, because there's so many. Like I said, there's just an optimized way to squeeze as much juice out of this process as you can possibly squeeze out of it. So as I've said in some of the things, as I'm putting this stuff out on the internet and typing up some things to try and help others see because the fact of the matter is that people see us, right? And I know this, you know,
I want to
hesitate
smile
say
like
this.
Shane.
Right, and
I want to be
have
Shane
people
happy
all around me
when I
in my
said
life
that.
that see the difference in me, you know, and they will tell me, you know, at work, in other places in my life, the people see it, right? And you know, yesterday was my juice pour day. We have that group thing where we get to, you know, where we encourage each other to pour a lot of juice on one another. We have a little group chat that we did that on. It's just a really cool way we're connecting. But you know, to have those things over and over again expressed, knowing that's the truth today, you know. So we get to be these lighthouses to shine this truth in order for other people to see it and want it, right? That attraction portion of this thing. And that, you know, we've got this, that if you're in a 12-step program, this can take you to that I smell more of that next level, whatever, to bring you up to more in your recovery, because that is a huge thing of people stagnating and resting on their laurels, as the other thing says, you know. And that's where we say, well, that's why you stop. When Chris was saying people coming back, they stopped because they quit getting fed, right? Because as long as you're continuing to get fed, you will continue eating, right? You will continue to do that. I just had a little thing like that rabbit I got in there, man. It will not stop eating. If you feed it, it will eat until I think it will pop.
Right.
That's the same way I feel about this program, this trajectory here, this growth path, is that as long as I continue to get it. So for those out there that are in a stuck kind of position or that want more, you know, this is here for them. It's also for the people who are looking for, you know, that missing element that they're not getting out of life what they think they will get, that programming, they don't see it, you know. So that's the cool thing. It's, you know, it works for everybody. It works for the people who are in a 12-step program. I can promise you, if you're in a 12-step program and you work in steps according to this book, you will grow more than you are today. I can also promise you that if you're not in 12-step and you do these, you work these steps and employ them in your life, your life's going to change greatly. You're going to like the change that you see.
I got, you were talking about the responsees and how you spread it onto them. I was talking to Christopher the other night about how now that I have the book, it's going to be easier for me because I sponsored 2 guys through the big book and this big book. In my opinion, is what I call it, the big book. Because it is a big book. And if you told somebody that was dying of cancer that if they read this book, they would be cured of cancer.
If they did the work, it's in it.
Yeah, they read it and did the work. it would kill a cancer. How many of those cancer patients would read that book?
Yeah, you do.
When the guy the other night, he said, oh, 700-some page book, I'm not gonna read that. I was like, well, you're not ready for it, you know, it's.
The thing I say, I don't think you read this book necessarily, you work it.
Right.
There's instructions in, you're not gonna, it's not to sit down and read tonight,
Right,
or
yeah,
to take a vacation and just.
For me, it's not a
Because
slow
you're really
read.
not gonna get that much, I mean, you will get something out of reading it,
Mhm.
certainly. But you
Every
get
day.
what you get out, where the power is doing the work behind the steps,
Mhm.
that's where the actual power is. So the work is things, so you're not like sitting down trying to read a 700-page book.
Yeah.
That's not the goal. The goal is to same as everything else. I mean, it's basically the same principles we use every day.
It's a textbook.
One day at a time. It's one thing at a time. It's how you eat elephant,
Mhm.
one bite at a time. You just
Right.
walk down it and march down that work, and your life will change beyond your understanding. Everybody says, if we would have wrote a script, we'd have sold ourselves short. That's a common thing everybody says. And we know that to be the truth.
Like you said, having those manila envelopes and just the knowledge that we were able to remember from reading that stuff, you know, and passing that on to the guys, and you know, like 4 or 5 months sober, and these people are saying how many years you got.
Yeah.
You know, it's amazing to watch that. I love watching my sponsees grow like
I
you do.
think you were going to go down a path, and there's one other thing, and we are closing in on that 2-hour mark, and I'm trying not to get our listeners to have to be roped into too much more than 2
Right,
hours
I feel you.
of this at a time. The thing you were saying, I can only really pass this along to so many people at a time, it takes a tremendous amount of energy to do that,
Yes.
to travel knowledge pathway, but with a book, I can now pass it along to you, and I think I can actually do more work, right? And I
Yes.
think I can actually sponsor more people effectively.
Yes.
I
I've got
personally can,
6 now.
I found that I can only do like 2 at a time effectively,
Mhm.
and really give them what's there. I don't know what that means, and I know it's not a quantity thing.
Right.
But I do want to help as many people as I can freaking help, and,
Yeah.
and you and I both have people waiting for us, they want us to sponsor them.
Yeah.
And I can't sponsor everybody that I would like to sponsor,
You
because I
want
never
to.
want to say no.
Yeah, exactly.
I
You
don't
want to
yeah.
so badly, yeah.
But this is gonna give an opportunity to do that at a greater pace and spread it.
In a 4 month,
Yeah.
that's about the turnaround right
Yeah,
now.
right.
I'm seeing it's 4 months, and they
And
got
they're
it. They're
ready to turn
sponsoring
it
people.
around and
Yeah,
and
it's
do
like,
the
wow.
same thing, so that
Wow.
this whole thing spider webs out.
Yeah. The
And we
ripple
get this
effect.
out to the masses, and I really do feel it, I wanna sit back, and that old voice in there wants to say to me about, I refuse to listen to it. It wants to say to me that this stuff can't happen, but I truly, my heart knows that. I'll look over the last few years, and I see what's been happening, and I know this is gonna be world changing. This is gonna help so many people. It's gonna be just to be a part of it. It's just a trip, man.
It's amazing to be a drop to start some of those ripples.
Yeah, you go, how did, man, and I get to stand here and do this today.
Yeah.
I'm gonna close it out. You got any final concluder?
Oh, man.
I like to do a concluder.
You dropped it on me. Why don't you do yours first?
Well, I have a little outro.
Okay,
I've
I
gotta do
got
too.
you.
Christopher, would
I'm
you
trying
like
to
to have
think.
another concluder? Jump in here.
Yeah,
Let's
jump in
hear
here.
it.
Yeah, I'll let you. I'm not a very good finisher.
I don't believe that for a minute.
That's all right, Shane, alcoholics don't finish anything.
Yeah, right.
He didn't get a chance to say it fully, so I'll say it for him. This man over here, I'm so proud of
Shane.
him. Shane, I am so proud of him. He's finding out who he is, and he's letting his little kid out, right? And that attracts people.
Yeah.
To say, oh man, this man's playing through life, he's smiling, he's helping others, this guy goes through life. He helps more people on his job, going through his day, people in traffic he sees need assistance,
Yeah.
strangers, anybody. He's letting that spirit of his out, and he's changing the world. He's already changing the world on a
Right.
daily basis,
Yeah.
and he was not, that's not the man I met,
Right.
who was eating all those opiate pills and everything else. And so, good for you, Shane, I'm
Yeah.
very, very proud of
Very
you.
cool.
I did want to throw a closer on here for the listener. Yeah, it's a freaking big book. I'm sorry, I'm not responsible for that. Higher power said put in everything that they need to know. And I had a sponsor at one time said, don't you go watering this shit down. This ain't no 12 steps for dummy shit. There's all these workbooks and treatment centers and worksheets on the internet, and you get that watered down recovery. Why even bother? Go for the gold. Give yourself the best. And what I wanted to really end on is I have a personal note to the reader in the beginning of the book about not giving up on yourself. I'm telling you folks, nobody else is going to do this for you. You do not have to go down to some sort of corporatized, programmed, consumer number, statistic, what was my life really about, and I don't even know, I know that was a nice ride, but it's over. You do not have to do that. You can awaken, you can have a completely different existence on this planet for yourself. One where you're happy, you know, and you wake up every morning because you want to get out of bed, and you want to do something, and you're so, and you have friends. Right? That's another problem in our world today. We're so disconnected. We are so separate from each other. Don't give up on yourself. Don't quit. This book is meant to be slowly absorbed. Somebody said to me last night, I'm only into the first chapter. I said, that's fine. Take your time. And you remember those books when you were a kid?
It really is an optimized pace.
Remember those books when you were a kid where you had a relationship with them and you took them everywhere you went and you just sort of slowly digested because it was just so awesome to be able to grow and learn things? And we've lost that with our Kindles and our podcasts and all that. Then, you know, it's nice add-ons, but don't let it replace what you can get from carrying a text around and taking quiet time under a tree on a nice spring day to read about stuff that's going to change your entire life.
Yeah.
Don't accept status quo, man. That's what they want us to do out there. They want us to be quiet, go home, drink your beer, smoke your joint. That's the next thing that's coming, dude. We're all like, oh, yay, legalize alcoholic. I'm like, oh, no. Another reason for us to sit home and not vote, and not participate, and not be an activist, and not demonstrate, and not call our senators, and not, that's what they want. These are all forms of control, man. And we're all like, we missed that point. When you know your truth and you have your voice, you become a very dangerous element to the powers that be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm telling you, anyone that's listening out there, you have a voice. You've had it since the beginning. It's the original you. And these motherfuckers have stolen it from you.
Right. Yeah.
Take it back. Do not accept that.
It's another phrase of this is finding your voice. That's another,
It's there.
That's a thing that's being tossed around.
If you'll listen, and that inner voice is talking to you already, that little kid saying, come back.
Yep. Yep.
I want you to, I miss you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's about all. I just, my goal in writing this, in case anybody wonders about my motives, is I just want to help others. And I'm imperfect, I'm a human being, and I have ego too, like anybody else. But the bottom line is I'm really worried about our planet, and I'm really worried about us as a species, and this book makes that very clear. If we do not change spiritually, I call it individual, personal, spiritual transformation. Me, myself, I have to change. If we don't start doing this, we're not going to make it. We are not. We are not going to change our ways. Things are already in motion that seem too big to turn around.
Yeah.
But if I will change myself, and I'll end on this. If you ever saw an alcoholic come crawling into the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous at their bottom, scraping in, completely absorbed by self-centeredness and ego and pain and resentment and not wanting anything else but the pain to stop. That's all I care about. Just get this pain off of me. I will do anything you say just to get this pain or this jail sentence off me or this medical issue out of my life. Just whatever it takes. That's all I want, right? They come in here, they do this process, and suddenly they turn into these beings that care about their fellow man. They care about making a difference. They care about having a purpose on this planet. They care about whether or not my life has meaning. They change, they transform. And you don't think that's going to change our world? We have alcoholics who are sober today who are making a difference out there, that without that element, the world would be different.
Yeah.
But because of Dan getting sober and Shane getting sober and changing for his family and for his kids, and providing his kids a whole different way to approach life, that's how you change the world, folks. It's not too late. I mean, I'm an eternal optimist. I do think there's opportunities, but we better get with the program, so to speak, before it's too late. I really appreciate you having me on here, Dan.
It's been a blast, and I've been waiting for this. I knew this was why I was standing here today, that clarity backwards, as I said, I knew this is why I was doing this now. I know where, I have some vision to where things are going and why.
More will be revealed.
Exactly, yeah. So one thing is that people are gonna wanna know where to get this information. One of the things I've started already is a Facebook page. It's called 12 Steps Spiritual Recovery. You can find it on there. If you just look on Facebook, you can find it. It has a picture of the cover of the book on there. It's a page. We started meetings, as I said, this is February the 23rd. Today, 2019 is the date of this broadcast, and so March the 14th in Louisville, Kentucky, we're starting. starting the first meeting, we're gonna try to start this thing. I'm gonna start one in Southern Indiana also.
And the first meeting will be at Unity Church down on Brook Street,
Yeah.
Brook Street down from Broadway, 7:30 to 9 o'clock.
7:30 on Thursday night.
And I'm
March
building the
14th.
web page right now, which I hope in a couple of weeks will be
That's
up
good.
and I want that to be a hub, right? Where people can participate and post pictures about their meetings that they're starting. I've already got several pictures from some of our friends who are reading the book, and I'm gonna post all those people going through the process. One guy sent a picture of his cat reading the book.
Yeah.
It said, even my cat wants to be free.
So that's 12-step spiritual recovery.
12stepspiritualrecovery.com.
.com.
And should be able to give you everything you need to know to get started.
Yep, there's other avenues, there's another one, the podcasts are being hosted on, well, all your major podcasting, affiliates, the Apple.
Oh,
all
and
that
also
stuff.
I hope to start YouTube videos, and we'll talk about spiritual sickness, we'll talk about the first step, things like that. I'd like to have Dan the Man as a guest, and yeah, well, full media blitz. Let's use these tools for change.
On spiritualunderground.org, you can find show notes for the podcast. You can also find links to these podcasts. There's actually, I have a contact me on that you can get to me personally. I will see those emails. So another thing that came up last time around was, if you're searching for this thing, my primary purpose today is to help people find this thing, this recovery, find our that which was lost. And so if I can help you do that, I want to do that. So do not hesitate to find that. Contact me on spiritualunderground.org. I think that's about all the commercials and all the wind we have for today. So Christopher always signed off with something. I don't think I'll just let him do it, because every time we talk on a daily basis, I know what his salutation at the end of the conversation. So would you oblige me, Christopher?
Peace out.
Always tried to be just who they wanted. Always tried to do everything they said. Only did the things they would approve of. Lock away all your dreams inside your head. Year after year you try to be a good girl. They never failed to point out when you were bad. Stuck to the program like a robot. Became a trophy for mom and dad.